This is the March 16th Louisville City Council meeting. I'm Mayor Ashley Stolzman. Because of COVID-19, this meeting is being held electronically and is being recorded. If you'd like to request permission to speak during public comment periods, an attendee can raise their hand by clicking on the raise hand button at the bottom of their screen. Attendees calling in can also raise their hand by dialing *9 on their phone, and we will see a raised hand appear on your behalf. When I acknowledge a member of the public and the clerk unmutes you, you'll need to state your name, address, and your question or concern. Each person will have 3 minutes for their comments. If you'd like to speak on another topic, just go ahead and raise your hand again. Thank you for following these directions this evening and helping us to maintain meeting decorum. Could we please have a roll call?
Mayor Stolzman?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Maloney?
Here.
Councilmember Brown?
Here.
Councilmember Dickinson? Councilmember Fahey?
Here.
Councilmember Lay?
Here.
Councilmember Lipton?
Thank you, everyone. Could I please get a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the approval of the agenda? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? Thank you. The motion carries. That takes us to public comment on items that are not on our agenda this evening or items that are on our consent agenda. If there are any members of the public that would care to comment, please go ahead and raise your hand at this time. And our first commenter is our fire chief, Chief Wilson.
Good evening, Ms. Mayor, City Council members, city staff, and City Manager. John Wilson, 895 Apio Way, Louisville Fire Protection District. First quarter check-in. Just wanted to make sure that I could answer any of your questions if you might have any, and also your safety tip for the quarter. So I'll answer any questions if you have any first.
I don't think we have any questions. We're just really looking to your wisdom and help to make sure if we proceed with anything this year, that you give us your honest advice and make sure we do things in a safe way. So looking for that, but we would love your safety tip.
I'll try my best on that one. So my safety tip for today or for the quarter, and I wish I had given this probably maybe a couple days ago, but that is snow shoveling safety tips. So give yourself plenty of time to shovel and don't rush yourself. Use a couple layers of clothing to keep your muscles warm and flexible. Do warm-up stretching of your arms, shoulders, legs, back beforehand. When you shovel, push the snow straight ahead and walk it to the snow bank and then throw it. Avoid any sudden twisting and turning. Bend your knees to lift when shoveling. Let your muscles and your legs and arms do the work. And then take regular rest breaks. So other than that, that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief. Thanks for keeping us safe out there. And we should have a chance to use that again here in the next week or so. So thank you for that advice.
Thanks.
Are there any other members of the public that would like to provide comment on items that are not on our agenda or items that show up on our consent agenda? All right, seeing none, that takes us back over to the consent agenda. Could I please get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Thank you. Thank you. There's a motion from Councilmember Brown and a second from Mayor Pro Tem Maloney. Is there any discussion of the consent agenda? Seeing none, all those in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, everyone. The motion carries. That takes us to our council informational comments on pertinent items that are not on the agenda. I'd just like to take a moment to thank our operations team. The snow plowing job that they did was really phenomenal. I know I've gotten some comments from folks that are either new to town or have different expectations, but really, if you take a look at our city's quality and compare it to other communities around us, they just have done heads and shoulders above the rest. And with a heavy wet snow like this, the amount of time that they've done it in is really phenomenal, and they're still working on it. So I can't thank them enough for all their efforts. Any other council informational comments on pertinent items that are not on our agenda? All right, seeing none, that takes us to our city manager's report.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Mayor, you stole my thunder. I just wanted to thank all our crews that were out there working on the storm. Public Works, Ops, Park, Golf, Maintenance, PD, Fire as well. Just wanted to thank everyone for all their efforts. And yeah, it looks great as I look out my window and it's snowing again. So
oh no.
Everybody be safe and hopefully warm as well. And then just wanted to remind folks, and we're sending out the mayor's message and other communications as well, but that a new eligibility category for vaccination will open up this Friday, 1B4, which includes people over 50, restaurant workers, a couple other categories, and also municipal employees. That's a pretty large category. It's about 2.5 million folks. So just want to continue to encourage folks, and then also make sure people have some patience, because it may take a while to get a vaccine appointment based on current supplies, but I know they're trying to ramp up as quick as they can. So just wanted to give you all that information, and happy to answer any questions. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Fahey.
Thank you. Yes, my one question is, does that also cover university or advanced level teachers?
Yeah, I believe there's a category in there for higher ed, for those that have more in-person contact. So yeah, so if, through our links on our website, and then also the state and Boulder County Public Health websites, it's very clear about who's in what category. So folks can check there to confirm.
Great. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much, City Manager. And that takes us to our regular business this evening. Our first item of regular business is a business assistance package or packages for the redevelopment of 957 Main Street and 824 South Street. We'll have Resolution 17, Series 2021, a resolution approving a business assistance agreement with 824 South for an economic development project in the city of Louisville. And then we'll take up Resolution 18, Series 2021, a resolution approving a business assistance agreement with South Street Market LLC for an economic development project in the city of Louisville. Megan Pierce, our Economic Vitality Director, will take us through a brief presentation on the two projects.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Yes, I will be brief. I know you have a full agenda tonight. So just to create some clarity here, the action requested is on two separate agreements, both of which relate to the redevelopment of 957 Main and 824 South Street in downtown Louisville. I'm sure most of us have seen this project transacting over time. This was previously a residential use, which I think is important based on the assistance requested. So 824 South Incorporated is the owner of the buildings, and South Street Market LLC is the proposed tenant of 824 South Street. What we're not covering tonight is the potential tenants who may be the future occupants of 957 Main. If they choose to pursue assistance, that would be brought forward at a later time. Overall, this development would add 12,258 square feet of commercial real estate to downtown that did not previously exist. So talking about the market concept, this would be a little over 2,000 square feet at 824 South. This would be a new sales tax generating use in downtown, and we've included the projections provided by the applicant in your agenda materials. These would be new employees that the owner hopes to grow over a period of 5 years. And while these are not at the Boulder County wage average, they do provide, new entry level basic jobs within the city of Louisville. They are hoping to be open later this spring. Overall, both projects meet our business assistance program criteria. I've outlined those significant ones for your review. And then at 824 South Incorporated, just to give you a sense of their assistance, that would be related to the construction of the buildings. So building permit fee rebates and construction use tax rebates capped at $61,000. We are giving this a little bit longer to transact in terms of both buildings reaching completion and obtaining their occupancy. There is clawback in the agreement that they must remain in Louisville for 5 years or repay a percentage of the agreement rebates. And South Street Market, 40% proposed rebate on the new sales tax generating use over a 5-year period, capped at $40,000. And the project must be completed, or the project really in this case commenced. So this would mean the business would open by August 31st of this year. And again, same 5-year period for a clawback on those rebates. Slide just showing the overall financial impact. So anticipated that we would pay out rebates around $60,540, but offset by revenues over $141,000. And sales tax revenue would be a potential rebate of $37,920 over 5 years, but the city would gain new sales tax revenue of $115,340. That's all I have on this item, but I'm happy to answer any questions, and the applicant is also on the meeting.
you. So it looks like we have a couple of questions and I'll come right back over to those, but I want to give the members of the public a chance to comment on this agenda item. If there are any members of the public that have comments on this agenda item, now is your opportunity to make those comments. And we have a couple people dialed in by phone, so if you've dialed in by phone, you'll dial *9 and we'll see a raise hand on your behalf. All right, seeing none, that takes us back over to council questions and comments. Mayor Pro Tem Maloney.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Director Pierce, the one question I have for clarification on the slide that's titled Financial Impact, can you talk about the offset anticipated revenues in the first two bullets? Can you give us a time frame for that?
Just going to share this again so we're all on the same page.
Thank you.
So the anticipated rebates on the building permit fees and construction use tax would be this year. So I would anticipate we would see those revenues and make those payments in calendar year 2021. We would make our first sales tax rebate payment in around February, March of 2022, and then for the subsequent 4 years after that. So that one has a slightly longer time horizon, but a lower payment each year, because we make those estimates based on their start dates and what they anticipate. The first year and second year are usually smaller, and then they anticipate to be sort of, at their full operation and having a good customer base. So those revenues would probably ramp up in terms of the rebates that third, fourth, and fifth year.
Thank you, Director Pierce. No more questions, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like to propose a motion to frame any further discussion?
Why not? Can I just do the first resolution?
Yes, that'd be great. One at a time.
All right. Make a motion to approve resolution number 17, series 2021.
Thank you. Is there a second? It looks like Councilmember Lipton.
Yes.
Thank you. There's a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion of the motion? All right, seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Any opposed? Thank you, everyone. And could I get a motion on the second resolution, please? Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to approve resolution number 18, series 2021.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Thank you. There's a second on the motion. Is there any discussion of the motion? All right, seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. The motion carries. Thank you very much. And that takes us to our next item of business this evening, which is resolution number 19, series 2021, a resolution approving a business assistant agreement with Earth Hero LLC for an economic development project in the city of Louisville. And Director Pierce is going to take us through that as well. Who is it?
So here now speaking about Earth Hero LLC, which
Megan, sorry, I'm just going to interrupt for a minute. We have just a number of folks with their microphones on. If I could get everybody to mute who's not presenting at this time. Thank you.
So Earth Hero LLC, this would be a new business to Louisville. They are currently located in Boulder. They are an online eco-friendly marketplace for products that are sourced, manufactured, and shipped in a way that protects the planet's future. So the company's been in business for a few years. They're growing and they're looking to do that growth in Louisville. They're currently looking at a space in the Colorado Technology Center that's available for lease. Just a bit of background, this would be about a little over 15,000 square feet. They currently have 21 employees, but they have some very significant growth plans over the future that I think has been well substantiated by what they've done since their founding. The average job salary that they have for existing and new employees comes in around about $60,000. They're looking to transact pretty quickly here. They're hoping to have operations up and running in Louisville this summer. And this would be producing new sales tax revenue for Louisville in the case where their products are sold to local Louisville residents. The project meets several of our BAP criteria. I think, interestingly, this is certainly a diverse industry sector that's growing and would be bringing something new in that regard to Louisville, both in terms of its corporate operations as well as the products that they provide that may be of interest to our residents. So the proposed assistance is related to building permit fees and construction use tax for their tenant finish work. They don't have a big scope of that, so that assistance would be 50% capped at $5,000. We've also, based on the sales tax projections they've made, and again, those are only sales tax projections that for local spend, would be a 40% rebate capped at $3,100. We would be giving them on this agreement until this fall to get completed on their project, and they would need to remain in Louisville for 5 years or pay back a percentage of those rebates received. Financial impact, looking at $4,785 for the rebates on the building permit fees and construction use tax. To the prior question, I would expect those to come forth this year and to have those payments made. The sales tax, again, over a 5-year period, we'd be expecting that they might generate, significant sales tax revenue over which the city would rebate about $3,000. So again, first rebate payment on that would be due in 2022 and then for the subsequent years thereafter. So total fiscal impact is $7,865. And happy to answer any questions about this applicant.
Thank you. With that, we'll turn it over to members of the public who may have comments on this agenda item this evening. If any members of the public would care to comment, please raise your virtual hand. And a few more people have joined by phone. So just so you know, you can raise your hand by dialing *9 if you've dialed in by phone. And for those joining by computer, you'll find a raise hand button at the bottom of your panel. All right, seeing none, that takes us back over to council comments and possible resolutions. And I do just want to say to the last applicant and this applicant, when we're in person, it's really nice to get to meet all of you and learn about the cool things that you're doing in the community. So I hope our enthusiasm is not totally lost over this virtual platform, but it is really exciting to see all of the cool things people are planning on doing here in town. And when the community finds out about all of this, they'll just be so excited. Mayor Pro Tem Maloney.
Thank you, Mayor, for your comments. I think that does get lost when we're moving along and we all agree with something. So Director Pierce, one question I have on the proposed assistance, the third bullet on there says project must be completed by September 30th of 2021. I absolutely have no problem with that. I'll be thrilled if it's done by then, but what I'm wondering is if should we give them longer? I know there's a number of items that are on the consent agenda. And of course, we had the COVID year, which slid everything, but I'm okay with these timeframes being longer in the future. So that's the extent of my comment. And with that, I'd like to make a motion to approve resolution number 19, series 2021.
Thank you. Is there a second? Councilmember Fahey? And any discussion of the motion, Councilmember Fahey?
No discussion. I just wanted to make sure it got seconded. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Thank you, everyone. The motion carries. That takes us to resolution number 20, series 2021. It's agenda item C. It's a resolution approving a preservation and restoration grant for the Hayes House located at 541 Jefferson Avenue. I will open a public hearing and I'll ask if there are any conflicts of interest any council members need to disclose. Seeing none, then I will first ask if we had any additional comments related to this that we need to enter into the record. I do not believe we had any. City Clerk Muth, I guess I'll ask that question of you.
No, we haven't received anything since the packet was published.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much. And so I'm going to turn it over to Kim Bauer, and I didn't know your last name. I knew it was Kim. So now I know. She's our newest planner in the planning department, and she'll take us through this presentation this evening.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and members of Council. Just as a quick introduction, thank you so much. My name is Kim Bauer. I'm the new Historic Preservation Planner. It's nice to meet all of you, and I'm honored to be able to serve this city. So I have before you this evening a request for preservation and restoration grant for 541 Jefferson Avenue, which you can see here on the map outlined with the white dashed line. As a brief summary, 541 Jefferson is also known as the Hayes House, which was landmarked late last year. At the same time, an alteration certificate was approved by the Historic Preservation Commission for proposed restoration work to the original house. At the February 22nd Historic Preservation Commission meeting, 541 Jefferson came back seeking grant fund approval for the aforementioned work approved for the original portion of the house, as well as an approval for an alteration certificate for a new addition in the rear of the property. Just as a note of clarity, these grant funds before you this evening would only be applied to the historic preservation work. In this slide, you are looking at a rendering of the restoration work to be done to the original portion of the Hayes House, including the removal of non-historic siding and the restoration of the existing original siding, as well as the replacement windows to better match historic photos we have of the property. So you can see some of the notes there before you. Just to supply a little more context, the slide now before you lists some of the common work that typically qualify for grant funds. And as you can see, the proposed work seeking grant funds this evening would fall under these categories. You can see the siding repair under preservation there, site grading under rehabilitation, and window replacement under restoration, just as some examples. And for a more detailed breakdown of how the scope of this proposed grant work would meet the grant qualifications, you can see it delineated on this table before you. This table shows the amount of both the fund request as well as the match. So altogether, the total cost is $70,000, but for a matching grant request of $35,000. Therefore, staff recommends approval of the proposed historic preservation grant application for the Hayes House in the amount of $35,000. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you so much. That was a great presentation, and it's great to meet you on camera like this.
You as well.
So I want to give everybody the time they would like, and so it's not required, but if the applicant would like to say any words or give any comments to us, they're welcome to.
Good evening. This is Andy Johnson with DAJ Design, 922A Main Street. Yes, Kim did a wonderful job presenting both tonight and at the Historic Preservation meeting. I don't have much to add. However, I do have slides and information if anybody's interested in the addition that's being proposed. This is a little bit atypical in terms of how we go about historic preservation and grant funding. I know that the question came up when the landmark was approved, that it was odd that no grant funding was in place. However, we just need the visibility given the odd nature of this property being so narrow and the fact that there was rehabilitation work to do, that we wanted some visibility on whether this was landmarkable as we had hoped it would be. So we move forward with the second alteration certificate and grant funding after our first set of approvals. So happy to answer any questions, and thank you for your consideration tonight.
Thank you so much, Andy Johnson. That's great. And if we do have questions, I will let you know. And so with that, I will turn it over to members of the public to see if anyone has comments on this agenda item this evening. Seeing none, that'll take us back over to council questions, comments, possible resolution motions. Councilmember Fahey.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I think that the design proposal for this property is really in line with the historic preservation goals of the city. It's going to bring it back to its original design, and not just the windows and the siding, but also the configuration of the building. I'd also like to welcome Kim and add my thanks. I think you did a wonderful job presenting. And so I would like to move to approve Resolution 20, Series 2021.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Fahey. Is there a second?
Second.
Councilmember Dickinson. Councilmember Dickinson seconds. And did you want to make a comment?
Yeah, I concur mostly with what Councilmember Fahey said. I think I had the pleasure of meeting Kim on Main Street in front of Giovannides. I was a little surprised to encounter you there. That was wonderful, and really happy with this presentation, and obviously the goal of protecting the style and shape of a home and how it presents on the sidewalk and the street as you walk by it. And so I think this is a wonderful use of our funds and a great project. So thank you for helping it through its process. That's all.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Maloney?
I'd like to also welcome Kim. Thank you. That was an excellent presentation. You know, this is this particular grant, and I'm going to be all for approving this. This is the intent, and I believe this is the intent that the citizens of Louisville, when the Historic Preservation Fund was created. And so I think this is terrific. I look forward to being able to do more in these in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. All right, with that, I don't see any other comments. And so I will ask all those, actually, because this is regarding a grant, I will ask for a roll call vote on this resolution. So City Clerk Muth, could you please do a roll call?
Member Dickinson,
Yes.
Councilmember Brown, Councilmember Lipton,
Yes.
Yes.
Mayor Stolzman,
Yes,
Councilmember Fahey,
Yes.
Councilmember Lay,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Maloney.
Yes.
thank you, everyone. That takes us to our next order of business, which is 701 grant, landmarking and historic preservation grant. First, we'll take up the resolution, which is a resolution approving a local landmark designation for the Louisville First Baptist Church located at 701 grant. And then we'll take up resolution 22, series 2021, a resolution approving a historic preservation fund grant for the First Baptist Church located at 701 Grant Avenue. And it looks like our planning director, Director Zucchero, is going to take us through this presentation.
Yes, good evening, everyone. This is Rob Zucchero, Planning and Building Safety Director. If you could just give me a minute to arrange my screen here. All right, thank you. So I'm going to be presenting on the next item, and it is a request for a landmark and a historic preservation fund grant for 701 Grant Avenue, which is currently a residential property, but it was originally developed as a church.
Rob, I'm so sorry. Sorry to interrupt. I've been in these Zoom meetings all day, and so I made a few errors here on this public hearing. First, I didn't open the public hearing, so we'll do that.
Okay.
And then we'll ask council members if there are any disclosures to be made on this agenda item. And there are none. And then I just want to confirm.
Mayor.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. Councilmember
Sorry.
Dickinson.
I do live 3 houses away from this structure, and so I feel like my engagement with my neighbors and my own, you know, this feels a little too close to home, so I would like to recuse myself from decisions on this property.
Thank you, Councilmember Dickinson. So Councilmember Dickinson will leave the virtual room, so we're not persuaded by any potential conflict. All right, thank you very much. Any other disclosures? All right, seeing none, I'll just confirm with the city clerk that there were no additional agenda materials that came in that need to be entered into the record.
No, nothing came in on this item.
Thank you very much. All right, so now that I've done my job, I will now turn it over to you, Director Zucchero.
All right, great, thank you. So again, this is 701 Grant Avenue. It's on the northwest corner of Pine Street and Grant Avenue. It's currently residential property, but it was originally developed as a church, and it was the home of the Louisville First Baptist Church from 1901 to 1971, at which time it was converted to a residence, and it has been since that time. So the proposed development is to restore the original 1901 church building, which you could see on the right of the screen, and then demolish the mid-century addition at the rear and replace it with a modern addition. So here's just a site plan showing where the original church would be preserved and where the addition would take place. There is also a detached garage at the rear facing the alley that's part of the proposal. So the proposed preservation work, there's a lot more detail in the staff report, but for time, I just wanted to note 2 really significant items on the preservation work on the historic church structure. One is to remove, if you're familiar with the property, there's a wraparound deck on the north and east sides, and part of the restoration is to remove that deck and restore the historic facade, which would be a major improvement or a significant improvement from a historic preservation standpoint. So that is included in the restoration. The other item I wanted to point to is the installation of replica windows. The windows are a real defining feature of the church building. They have a really distinctive decorative arch element. So They are in really bad shape, but the applicant is proposing to install replica windows that would be modern, energy efficient windows, but they would very closely replicate the historic windows on the property. So the Historic Preservation Commission reviewed the alteration certificate for this project on February 22nd. They did approve the restoration work and the alteration, including the addition at the rear. So staff, so here's just, sorry, before I get to that, here's just a few images of the proposed addition. So to your first item, which is the landmark. So the Historic Preservation Commission and staff are recommending that the landmark designation be approved. We both staff and the HPC did find that there is architectural and social significance of this property that would lead to it being landmark. So we are recommending approval of that request. So to the grant request, so it is a fairly significant grant request. It's a matching grant of a little over $124,000. The maximum grant with for residential structure is $40,000, but if there are extraordinary circumstances, City Council may approve larger amounts when there's a finding that there are circumstances that could be building size, condition, architectural details, or other unique conditions that lead to extraordinary circumstances that would justify a larger grant amount. So both staff and the Historic Preservation Commission are recommending approval of the grant. The findings include that the size of this structure, there are structural elements, including significant foundation work. There's a basement that actually extends up below the front deck that would need to be removed, and the basement would have to be rebuilt for that portion. The replica windows and other detailing, all of these items are much more significant and extensive than a typical residential restoration project. So staff and the HPC, again, are recommending approval of the grant request. With that, I would end my presentation and ask for any questions.
Thank you very much, Director, and we will take it over to public comments on this agenda item this evening. So if any members of the public have comments that they'd like to make on this agenda item, please raise your hand at this time. Seeing no public comments, that takes us back over to council member comments, questions, or motions. Councilmember Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate that. It's very exciting to see this property come forward. It's, as a person who grew up in Louisville, it's a property that I have, it's hard to miss, right? And it's a property that I have sort of paid attention to basically my entire life. And it's always been sad to me that it has been vacant or in disrepair in various states throughout that history. I'm very excited to see the original 1901 building restored. As a matter of fact, I didn't even know until reading the packet how old that building really was or when the church left. All I knew was that it had once been a church and wasn't at some point. So it's exciting to have the historical background in the council record. And it's also exciting to move forward with this. I realize that it's an extremely large grant relative to our normal grant size. But I think given the history of this property and that given the sort of importance to the community as sort of an iconic space, as well as the history of it being sort of in disrepair for extended periods of time, I'm willing to say that constitutes extenuating circumstances. So consider myself in full support of this particular application.
And would you like to make a motion?
I would like to move resolution, what are we up to now?
21.
Series
21.
21, sorry, 21 series 2020.
I think 2021.
Resolution 21 series, resolution 21 series 21, right?
Yes.
Did I get that right? Okay. Second. Thank you.
There's a motion and a second.
Sorry, that was the worst motion ever. Sorry.
It was really good. It was really good council member comments though, so it made up for it. Council member, thank you.
Okay.
Council member, thank you.
I would love to second that motion.
All right.
And it is 2020, it's motion, resolution 21, 2021.
Yes,
It
thank
is
you.
confusing, but yes, I think that's a really significant structure. I also have been here for 40 years driving by that thing, probably at least 2 or 3 times a week. And it just brings me back to what Louisville was. It still looks, even with the addition on the back, they've still maintained the front almost entirely the same, with the exception of that porch, I guess. But even the porch, I have to say, has been here since I've been here. So, so yes, I will second that motion and think it's a wonderful project.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Lay.
Yeah, I echo what's been said so far. This is a structure that I've run past and walked past for 25 years. And I think that's true in some respects, certainly, and driven past. True for a good chunk of Louisville. It's a real iconic, important building. And we've had various projects, proposals come before us in past years. We know that it's, I mean, I remember just how kind of complicated the whole structure is, and have absolutely no doubt that there are extraordinary circumstances here. So I'm in absolutely full support, and I'm really tickled that this is gonna be done. So my hat's off.
Thank you very much. With that, I will close the public hearing and I will ask all those in favor of Resolution 21, Series 2021, to say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, everyone. And that brings us to the next resolution, which I'll move that we approve Resolution 22, Series 2021, a resolution approving a Historic Preservation Fund grant for the Louisville First Baptist Church located at 701 Grant Avenue. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion of this motion? And since it's the grant, I'll ask for a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Fahey,
Yes.
Councilmember Dickinson.
He's recused.
Oh, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Maloney,
Yes.
Councilmember Lipton,
Yes.
Councilmember Brown,
Yes.
Mayor Stolzman,
Yes.
Councilmember Lay.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone. And so we'll take just a moment to invite Councilmember Dickinson back into the meeting. Mayor Pro Tem Maloney, will you do that for us?
Mayor, I just texted him. This is Heather.
Thank you very much, City Manager Balser. And we will give him just a moment to join in. I am just not seeing him in the panel.
Mayor, he has been invited.
Okay, fantastic. So we'll give him just another minute or two. I will say this is much easier in person. You can just go out the hall and get the person. There we go.
Sorry, guys, not sure how long I was.
No, thank you
out of
very much.
pocket.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Dickinson. And we are just finished with that agenda item, and that takes us all to the next agenda item this evening. Agenda item E in the packet for folks following along online. It's resolution number 23, series 2021, a resolution approving a preliminary and final planned unit development to allow construction of a 100,000 square foot industrial building, a preliminary and final planned unit development and special review use to allow a 3,500 square foot convenience store and auto fueling station and associated site improvements, and a final plat to create 2 parcels, 4 lots, and 2 outlots, located at the northeast corner of South 96th Street and Dillon Road, a portion of the southwest quarter of Section 16, Township 1, South Range 69 west of the 6th prime meridian. I will open the public hearing and I will ask council members if there are any disclosures. Seeing none, I will enter into the record some additional comments that came in today. They're posted online underneath the agenda packet as additional comments that came in, public comments that came in online. And I will ask our planner, Lisa Ritchie, if there are any other things that I need to enter into the record.
No, Mayor Solzman, nothing else has come in that we need to enter. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. So we will have a presentation this evening from Lisa Ritchie, our planner. Hi, Lisa.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Give me one moment here. I will pull up slideshow. Can you all see that okay?
Yes, we can.
Great. So tonight you are here to consider Resolution 23, Series 2021, consideration of a preliminary and final PUD, special review use, as well as a final plat. Public notice was met per municipal code requirements. Again, a little bit of context. As you mentioned, this is on the northeast corner of Dillon Road and South 96th Street, comprised of the 3 properties outlined in red. A lot of background here, starting kind of with the size, 51 acres when it was annexed, initially zoned. We'll skip a little bit of this. We can come back to it if needed, but essentially some of you were around when a preliminary plat and preliminary PUD was approved for the Ascent Church back in 2018. Following that, as you know, Ascent purchased 550 McCaslin in 2019, and the property is now under contract by the applicant, United Properties. And recently you approved the second amendment to the GDP last fall, which amended uses and development standards. And again, a little bit of context as we zoom out here, you can see kind of the open space and preservation land surrounding this property. However, this property is commercially zoned and has provisions in the GDP for buffers and setbacks and things like that. Again, we have the approved GDP on this slide with the property that is under consideration tonight for the PUD and the SRU outlined in yellow. The plat is for the entirety of the property. We'll cover this more in a minute, but it creates 4 lots, 2 parcels, 2 outlots, as well as the preliminary and final plan unit development with special review use for your consideration for lot 1 and 4 of the plat. This image shows the configuration of the plat, and this is substantially the same in configuration to the preliminary plat that was approved in 2018. Some minor changes, but nothing too substantive here. So outlot A and outlot B are colored in orange. Those will be dedicated to the city to meet a portion of the public land dedication requirement. That configuration was approved on the first GDP back in 2004 for the property, so it brings that obligation forward through approval of this plat for those lands to be transferred to city ownership, as well as the transportation master plan and GDP called for a trail to be constructed by the city at some point in the future in outlot A. Again, in the red here, we see lots 1 through 4. This is that portion that was previously planned for Ascent and now subject to this PUD and SRU. And then we also have in green, light green, parcel 1. This is the property owned by the Archdiocese. And then in blue, parcel 2, which is owned by Adrian Gomez. So per our municipal code, when property is not platted, there is a land dedication requirement. So this property, the entirety of this property is subject to a 12% dedication. 12% is set out in the municipal code. So this table here, the bottom row is really the total obligation, both for land, and then we deduct out, they'll meet a portion of it through land and the remainder through cash and lieu. So outlot A and B, less some portions of those properties that are encumbered by what would typically be easements. So drainage easement, utility and things. So there's a little bit of outlot A and B that don't meet this dedication requirement. So you can see there's a deficit total of roughly 150,000 square feet for the property. The subdivision agreement, as well as the approval in 2018, set forth a partial deferral. And so staff is carrying forward that request. And we can talk more about this on this table, but essentially at this time, the city would get outlot A and B, and then with recordation of the plat and subdivision agreement, we would get the cash in lieu payment for the United Properties Ascent piece of roughly $158,000. The rest of the $95,000 and the $268,000 would be paid. The subdivision agreement proposes that any time in the future when those would be further subdivided or developed, that those funds would be due at that time. This slide shows the deferment amount in today's dollars with an appraisal, current appraisal. However, the subdivision agreement requires a new appraisal within 30 days of those future approvals. So that would be set at a future value. This is just showing the today's value. So we get into the PUD. Again, the PUD covers developments on 2 of the 4 lots within the center portion of this property. South 96th Street is on the bottom of your screen, so north is to the left. BNSF Railroad is at the top of the screen. Again, there's the outline here for the future trail. At the rear on lot 1, the large lot in the back, we have a large industrial building. And again, industrial uses are allowed by right per the GDP amendment. However, the GDP also requires commercial level architecture for the entire development. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. And then lot 2, closer to 96th Street is a proposed convenience store with an auto fueling station. And again, this needs to meet the SRU criteria. So this isn't a use within the GDP that requires approval of an SRU. And as you remember, there were some development standards in the GDP that modified the setbacks from the underlying zoning. This design meets those requirements, as well as the higher standard for landscaping and things like that for the site design here. This is an image of the proposed architecture for the convenience store. There is a canopy that is intervening between this building and South 96th Street. An image of that was also included in the staff report. I can pull that up in the PUD if needed. And this is a rendering of the proposed architecture for the industrial building in the back. And again, the GDP requires elevated architecture to meet the current or the CDDSG requirements, not the IDDSG. And so to accomplish that, you see these wood look, they're metal, but they appear as wood, in these insets. Certainly have some elevated detailing around the primary entry. There's a metal cap, and it's harder to tell in this configuration, but these center portions are clad with a fiber cement panel in a gridded panel, so kind of a gridded system. So it doesn't all appear as tilt-up concrete. It's clad with additional materials. So when we look for compliance, again, as noted, there are setbacks within the GDP. This proposal meets those. It meets the 55-foot building setback as well as the 30-foot parking setback along South 96th Street. It meets the building height, and as we discussed, the CDDSG standards apply, and staff finds that those are all met with the exception of 2 waivers for landscaping, which we'll talk about. It does have enhanced landscaping along South 96th Street. And you may remember when this GDP amendment came before City Council last fall, a condition was added during the hearing that the development exceed CDDSG requirements for dark sky lighting. And so staff work extensively with this applicant, as well as reviewed best practice materials. As you know, our code is out of date when it comes to some of these best practices. And so staff finds that the light levels, the light color temperature, the light spread and contrast ratios all meet best practices for dark sky lighting, particularly when you think about this use in this context. And again, for CDDSG compliant, we have noted waivers. One is for building perimeter landscaping. Staff supports this waiver because there's additional landscaping placed at site entry areas, and we find this is an improved design. The request comes at the recommendation of an engineer to try and keep water away from a foundation. As well as 20-foot on Center Street trees for the north and south private drive. And again, as further described in the staff report, other sections allow a 40-foot on center. This results in a deficiency of 16 trees, but those trees are placed along the eastern elevation near the trail corridor. And staff finds that that's an improved design to shield this building, as you can see from the future trail here. So when you look at this eastern elevation from a landscape perspective, it is heavily treed. Next up, we talk about the special review use, and again, that's required for approval of the convenience store. And so there's full criteria and analysis in the staff report, but essentially we do find that this is consistent with a rural context area, which sets forth auto-oriented uses and development patterns, contributes to economic prosperity of the city. The site design is compatible with the surrounding areas through compliance with the GDP, and no waivers are requested for this portion of the PUD. And therefore we find it meets all the criteria in the code. The plat meets all the requirements in the code. We did analysis for a modification related to the public land deferral. We find it will not alter essential character. There is a public amenity through the dedication of the outlots. And again, we're carrying forth this approval from the preliminary plat in 2018. With that, we recommend approval of Resolution 23, Series 2021. We have no conditions. I believe this applicant has a short presentation, and I'm also available for any questions you may have.
Thank you very much, Planner Ritchie. So with that, we'll turn it over to the applicant for a presentation.
Thank you. Yeah, Lisa, and Megan's going to share her screen. I don't know if you need to give her permissions. And then I think Jim is going to just lead out for a minute, and then I'll take over from there.
Yeah, great. Thanks. Hopefully you guys can hear me. It is so good to be with you guys tonight. We got a really brief presentation, and first just want to say thank you to the staff and the council for, man, we've been in front of you guys a lot on this one. This is about a two-year journey where we have had it's been incredibly challenging. We've somehow managed to balance 3 different owners, diverse owners with you know, a lot of different things that they're hoping for in the property. We've managed to bring them together. We've managed to navigate some really challenging infrastructure requirements. And so that's required a ton of work. We've managed to figure out the public land dedication piece. This has really been a bear of a property. In fact, I'm not sure, you know, Lisa Ritchie could tell us if there's a more complicated property in the city, but we work really hard, and I'm really pleased and happy to be partnered with Alicia and United Properties on this. They work really hard with the staff. You'll remember last time we came to council, you know, we'd come out of Planning Commission, and this time we're coming to you because they've made a lot of compromises and work together. We're coming to you with a unanimous Planning Commission, with the staff voting or wanting this in favor of this without conditions, and that's really a tribute to the staff's hard work and to Alicia and her team's hard work, where they have really combined together to make this I think a really great project. So hope is that this is the last time you see my face for this particular property. I really hope that you'll approve this tonight. I think it's going to unlock a lot of things, not only here, but obviously at 550 McCaslin, which is dear to our hearts. So thank you for listening. I'm going to turn it over to Alicia and her team now.
Thank you, Jim. Alicia Reimer, United Properties, Senior Vice President of Development. It's really exciting to finally be here this evening in front of you guys. If you remember, in September, we brought the GDP amendment in front of you for approval, and that really laid the groundwork of the development plans that we are seeking approval for in 2 phases for this particular corridor. And so phase 1 is actually what we're here to talk to you about tonight, as Lisa had talked about, which is the 100,000 square foot of industrial, the 7-Eleven convenience store, and we're actively marketing and talking to a couple retailers for the remaining 2 pads that will come in front of you at a later date as those solidify. And we are currently also working on the phase 2 piece of it that you see here that we'll be bringing in front of you guys, hopefully for approval in the next 60 to 90 days. So just wanted to understand kind of the entire picture here. Megan, if you can go to the next slide. You know, at GDP amendment time and understanding our review of the comprehensive plan, we understood from staff and we heard, you know, Planning Commission and Council, the importance of maintaining kind of that rural entryway into the city and making sure that this development was multi-modular and catered to not only the vehicular traffic, but as well as the pedestrians and tenants within the center itself. So in addition to the 96th Street improvements that we will be making with this phase 1 development, you know, we are proposing and providing that 8-foot detached sidewalk and tree lawn along 96th Street, in addition to the additional buffer that we'll be providing, and I'll go into detail about. We're providing also 6-foot detached sidewalks inside the development as you enter in through the entrances. And then that'll go down to a 5-foot attached sidewalk with 3-foot shoulders on the internal private roadways. We have pedestrian connectivity and provided throughout the developments, which will be stripe connections that connect to sidewalks and then connect to each of the lots, so that we encourage walkability with both the industrial tenants as well as the retail customers and the back and forth. There will be bicycle parking as well and some seating amenities that we'll talk about. And then, of course, Lisa talked about the eastern property line. This development allows for the PL dedication to happen for the future trail that is part of the overall trail plan for the city. So as part of the design, and we understood that, and we really wanted to focus on how do we maintain kind of that rural entryway. And so what we have done here, what we really are doing that through creating a balance between the rural landscape that's happening to the west with the open space to the commercial, transitioning to the commercial space that's going to happen to the east. And we are doing that through kind of material selection and placement. And so what we've done is worked really hard with a landscape architect. And so we're going to spec and place more grasses and planting materials that are your typical used to seeing more in an open space scenario in the tree lawn, and as well as transitioning that through the buffer as you move from, you know, west to east. And then as we get further into the development, then we'll transition to more commercialized type planting materials. We're clustering those and we're placing them in a way that it kind of makes it feel more like a rural open space type feel along 96th Street, and then transitioning to commercial. We clustered a lot of the planting materials. We selected ones that will grow kind of vast and wide to fully effectively screen the paving as well as the pumps. And then we increased the buffers on the entryways and around the parking areas. As you can see, we have quite a big landscaping buffer on that entrance there, so that it really wraps around the parking. So as you're moving north on 96th Street, you're really seeing the landscaping and you're seeing the entryway features as the focal point and not the paving itself. We also added additional trees and shrubs and grasses than what is typically required. And we added 58 additional linear feet of building perimeter landscaping on the south side there for just additional vegetation, really making that appearance into the city a focal point. And we're adding a seating and amenity area on the south side of the building that you can see there in the that's off the 7-Eleven that, you know, the resident or customers and so forth can use. And then in addition to that, we enhanced our architecture. As you can see, we're providing pitched roof elements on both the canopy and mansard canopy, as well as the building. And we're adding a faux kind of wooden beam that will really set off the entrance into the facility itself. Also kind of adding on to that rural amenity and type and feel. Next slide. As far as the lighting goes, we've worked really hard with staff, as Lisa said. We heard you guys' concerns at GDP amendment time about dark sky and making sure that, the lighting was reasonable and not impactful. And so we're using full energy efficient LED focused lighting. It's full cutoff. And we've reduced the foot candles down to about half of what we typically would do for this particular type of use. And as you can see, this gives you a clear indication of what it will look like at night. It's intended to light really the only the area and the area that it's focused on, with zero wash off of the property line. And this in itself doesn't take into account all of the enhanced landscaping that we just talked about, which will be an additional mitigating factor from the area. So now I'd like to turn it over to 7-Eleven for a minute here to talk. We've done several of these larger, what we call next gen mixed use developments in the last 5 years across the Denver metro area. And there's been a lot of great synergies with 7-Eleven and our industrial tenants in those developments. The great thing about 7-Eleven is they're really convenience first, gas is secondary. And so they have quite a big product assortment and food offering. And we're really excited about what that could mean for the industrial tenants that we intend to attract within our development, as well as serving CTC right behind us. So with that being said, I'll turn it over to Chase and he'll talk a little bit about 7-Eleven. Chase, can you talk? Lisa, he said he might have trouble.
So it looks, City Clerk Muse, it looks like Chase is in the attendee list and rather than the panelist list. If you could please unmute him.
I have Chase listed 3 different places, so I'm going to assume this is the correct one.
We'll give it a go. Chase?
Can you hear me?
We can hear you now. Great.
Oh, perfect. I've had to log back in 3 or 4 different times, and now it's echoing. So I'll try and be brief. Thank you again for allowing me to be here. Like Alicia said, 7-Eleven is convenience first, fuel second. The majority of our stores are franchise. Sorry, just a lot of echo in the. So let me see if I can adjust.
If it makes you feel better, we're not hearing the echo.
Okay, well, the echo's in my head and kind of throwing off my train of thought, but I'll keep going. Most of our stores are franchise, which allows him or her to embed themselves into the local community, interacting with local businesses, schools, centers in the area. We also have Project A-Game, which is a grant that the franchisee provides to local schools or nonprofits. Also provides food and drink and donations for local communities. We pride ourselves in our daily fresh food, such as sandwiches, fruit, salads, baked goods, meals ready to eat. And I believe this location will support the community as a small grocery store, while also providing fuel and other services that are needed, since there doesn't really provide those amenities within the area. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I think there's still more presentation.
Just a couple more slides here. Good evening, everyone. I'm Megan Turner. I work on our industrial team here, and Lisa did just a great job describing our application here and the project, so I'll be really, really brief. This is just another viewpoint here on the southwest corner of the industrial building, 100,000 square foot building. We worked really hard with staff to make sure that this building met the commercial design guidelines, and so added some additional architectural elements above what we would typically do in an industrial building. including that textured fiber cement board siding, which really adds some dimension to the building, along with some wood look, kind of aluminum for different color and variation here. And I'll just keep it really brief on the industrial. So that's all I'll say, but happy to answer any questions on the industrial piece. But just to wrap it up here, you know, we're really excited to be in front of you this evening, and it's been a long road and a long time coming and a lot of work, as Jim and Alicia have mentioned. You know, this site really, we believe it provides amenities to the neighborhood, to the industrial tenants in CTC, and then also the future industrial tenant as well in Building 1, and for the phase 2 that we'll be bringing in front of you in about a couple of months here. Creates jobs through the industrial tenancy. We talked about that public land dedication fee that immediately activates, and of $158,000 that will come into the city on that public land cash in lieu, in addition to the over 3 acres that are being dedicated for the public land dedication. Allows, you know, sales tax revenue through the retail tenants and through the 7-Eleven, and just provides a path forward to activate this site. So with that, I will close and open for any questions or hand it back to you, Mayor.
Thank you very much for the presentation. So that takes us to the public comment portion of this agenda item. So if any members of the public care to comment on this agenda item this evening, please raise your hand at this time. If you've dialed in by phone, you can dial *9 and we'll be able to see a hand that I'll call on you. And we have about 22 people in the attendee side, 24 people in the panelist side. So there's a bit of a queue of hands being raised right now. And so just keep your hand up until I get to you. And when I do call on members of the public, I'll ask you to tell us your name and then your address, and then make your comment for the record. And each person will have 3 minutes to tell us what they would like to tell us. So the first person up this evening is J.H. Cooperman.
Hello.
Hi there.
Hi, this is Josh Cooperman. I live at 2165 Wagon Way. First of all, I would just like to apologize for registering these comments sort of at the last minute. I have only lived in Louisville for, well, not as long as this project has been in development, and I only noticed the full scope of the project recently. In any case, I would like to argue that this project is inconsistent with 3 of the guiding documents the city has, namely the comprehensive plan, the transportation master plan, and the sustainability action plan. First of all, regarding the comprehensive plan, in that document, under the core community values, one of those is unique commercial areas and distinctive neighborhoods. And it says that the city is committed to recognizing the diversity of Louisville's commercial areas and neighborhoods by establishing customized policies and tools to ensure that each maintains its individual character. So while I appreciate that staff has found that the development would retain the character of the land there, I respectfully do not agree. I think that a gas station and a convenience store would not fit at all with what is currently there. On the other hand, the industrial site does sort of match with what is across the train tracks, although that is zoned as suburban. Secondly, in the core community values, there are sustainable practices. I'll come back to those in a moment. Thirdly, from the comprehensive plan, it states, and specifically for this property, that the uses in this special district will be separated and buffered from the surrounding roads to maintain the appearance of a rural entryway to the city. Again, I disagree with staff. I would argue that a gas station and a convenience store would not preserve the rural entryway to the city. Now, in the transportation master plan, it does not identify any need for a gas station in this location. Finally, in the sustainability action plan, I would say that this development goes against many of the goals in that plan. For instance, the city has committed to supporting local food and agriculture. I don't believe that a franchise of a 7-Eleven meets that goal. Secondly, the city wants to take action on climate and reduce GHG emissions. Again, I don't think that putting in a gas station would meet would go towards that goal. Thirdly, on the issue of energy, the city has committed to moving towards carbon-free energy. And once again, I don't think gas-powered cars would go towards that. And on the issue of transportation, the city has committed to reducing emissions from gas-powered vehicles. All right. Finally, I would like to say that municipalities in the US are banning the building of new gas stations because we're moving towards electric vehicles.
Thank
many
you
of which
so
are
much.
implemented in the city
And
already.
thank you so
Thank you
much
very
for your
much.
thank you for your comments. And I apologize, I'm gonna have to hold people to 3 minutes this evening, just we want to make sure we get everyone's comments in. So thank you very much. And the next person to comment this evening is Tamar.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't want to repeat what's been said before. It's been great to hear so many. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I'm sorry. I should have said my name is Tamar Krantz and I live at 691 West Street in Louisville. And I'm glad to hear so many positive developments. And again, I'm sorry to be a voice of no. I already wrote in to you to say why a fossil fuel gas station is not good for our regional air quality or the global climate or for the future of climate neutral transportation in this country. And the previous speaker just mentioned a lot of those reasons. So I just wanted to add really quickly that I don't believe that a gas station meets the first of the 5 criteria that were established by city code for approval of a special review use. And that is that the proposed use or development is consistent in all respects with the spirit and intent of the comprehensive plan. It goes on, but just as far as the comprehensive plan is concerned, the gas station is contrary to the core community values of sustainable practices for the economy, community, and environment. And it's also contrary to the core community value of a balanced transportation system. And just one more thing I wanted to add real quick. As a parent of a child at Monarch with 2 more coming up to Monarch, I like the idea of locally sourced food. The school district is doing a great job with zero waste and providing healthy foods to kids. And now it's going to create this being so close to Monarch is just going to be one more temptation for the kids who have access to cars to be tempted to buy food that comes in plastic containers and disposable items. I also really appreciate the developer, the person from 7-Eleven saying that they would donate water bottles and donuts to some of our local to events in our local community. But we don't need plastic water bottles or donuts. We'd probably be looking for, a lot of our events have moved on to zero waste events with healthier foods. Thanks so much.
Thank you. The next member to comment is Tim Cromie.
Mr. Cromie, you need to unmute on your end.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm double muted. Yeah, this is Tim Cromie and Janine Cromie at 134 Jackson Circle in Louisville. I want to thank the mayor and the council members for this chance to speak tonight. We're in favor of this project because the city could benefit from the revenue. Drive by that intersection all the time and usually have to go outside the city to either go get gas or supplies when in that area. So I think having the gas station will be able to be a start to other businesses coming in and bringing some income or revenue back to the city. We've lost a lot of businesses in Louisville to our neighboring towns, and this would help us to bring some of that back. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Our next commenter this evening is Tiffany Boyd.
Hi, my name's Tiffany Boyd. I live at 550 Grant Avenue, and I would just like to join the chorus that Josh and Tamar started and again, respectfully request that we do not add a fossil fuel gas station to our town, when indeed, as Josh and Tamar both brought up, that adding something that emits to our greenhouse gases is very contrary to many of our goals. Josh said it very well, not only our transportation plan, our sustainability action plan, and our city's comprehensive plan. Wouldn't it be great if the infrastructure of our city reflected the direction we want our city to go? So what if that site was all electric vehicle charging stations? What if that site provided bicycle tools for people to repair their own bicycles and fill their tires? What if we let the infrastructure lead the future that we want our city to be? A gas station is completely the opposite thing of the direction we want our city to go. So I just respectfully hope that, as Tamar said, if there's going to be some development close to the railroad tracks that reflects the industrial park on the other side, and that part is inevitable, but I think we should really rethink the message that we're sending as a community by building a gas station, when everything we're trying to go against is to help support climate action and move in a completely different direction than more emissions and more greenhouse gases. That's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. The next commenter is Sherry Summer.
Sorry about that. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you so much. Sherry Summer, 910 South Palisade Court. And I'd like to, I won't reiterate the excellent points made by Josh, Tiffany, and Tamar, but I agree with all of them. And I sent a letter with many of the same points in it. I also would like to turn attention to the very large industrial building at the rear. Forgive me if I've missed this, but have we talked about sustainability measures in that building? I don't remember anything in the packet about solar, about any kind of LEED certification or any kind of sustainability measures. And with a building of that size, I think it's very important that this proposal not be approved tonight, but sent back to Planning Commission, the Planning Department for upgrades on sustainability. Thank you.
Thank you. The next commenter is Stephanie Rowe.
Hi there. Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Stephanie Rowe, 631 West Street in Louisville. And again, really good comments tonight, and everybody speaking better than I can to a lot of these issues. So I appreciate that, and I concur with all of them. I am wondering, I'm coming to this project a little late, and I have not read all of the supporting documents. So I'm just wondering right now if the developer has conducted any wildlife surveys of the site and what they're planning to do about wildlife on the site currently. What sorts of animals and wildlife habitat are going to be impacted by this development? What is the plan to deal with the habitat that they will have to destroy? Satellite imagery certainly shows prairie dogs on the site. Will those be poisoned or gassed? What exactly is the plan? I know that the city does not require that the developer have a plan or disclose it, but it seems to me to be sort of an ethical thing to do. And in the interest of transparency, I'm hoping that they'll be able to share with us what their plans are for that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. The next commenter is Bill Stevens. It looks like we had you unmuted for a moment. You might try unmuting yourself again.
Sorry, guys. You can hear me now, I'm guessing, right?
Yes, that's right.
Hi, Mayor Stoltzman and the team. Thanks for letting me speak. I'm Bill Stevens. I'm the lead pastor at Ascent Church with Jim. And first, I can only imagine how hard it is for you guys to lead in the midst of a pandemic like this. I just so respect you guys. The thing that Jim and I have loved about you all is in the relationship that Ascent has had with you guys has been the fact that we share such similar characteristics: accessibility, generous, you're deeply caring for the community, and you take risks. And we recognize there's risks involved with this one. And you guys walk that fine line between preserving the small town feel that puts us on the top 10 list of almost all best cities to live in the United States. And at the same time, you recognize the need for limited development that provides the infrastructure for the city and the funds to run it. And so you guys have walked that fine line so beautifully over the years. I've been in this community for over 20 years now, and you have walked that line. And we believe that the 96 property is still walking that line. The open space on one side, the property that is is going to be developed on the other side. We know that it's going to be developed at some point. We know that 96 property will be developed at some point. And it's going to take someone that's willing to do the really heavy lifting to bring the proper infrastructure into that area, the sewage and the water and the electricity. It's an odd shaped property, and United Properties has done some serious work to see that can happen. I know that there's concerns over convenience and gas and 7-Eleven, even the look of it, but we know that we're talking about something that we're not talking about a 7-Eleven from 25 years ago. We're talking about something today that looks so much different than what it once did. We know that this project is linked to our 550 McCaslin project. We know that this affects that one for us. But ultimately, I mean, I think about the legacy that can be left as these two things are both developed. These two projects are both developed. But the biggest picture is you guys taking that strategic, needed risk to keep up with a beautiful community that we have. And I trust that you guys are gonna make the right decision and the best decision for the community on this. So I love it that we continue to partner with you guys, and we will continue to partner with you. Thanks for giving me a chance to share.
Thank you. Our next commenter is Villa or Via.
Can you hear us okay?
Yes,
Can you hear us now? Sorry. Okay, great. Hey, this is Justin Bill and also my fiance, Megan Malcolm Peck.
Yeah, we just wanted to come on. Thanks for giving us a second to speak. We own a company in the Colorado Tech Center, which is right down the street. We've owned that company since 1991, located at 528 South Taylor, and work with many leaders in the community. And in addition, we're also owners of the Highest Image Foundation, and that company gives back to many nonprofits in the areas of Louisville and Boulder. So we kind of look at this in multiple ways, but definitely believe that the Colorado Tech Center has many businesses in place that have been established for a long time. And this development is giving opportunity for the growth of more companies and potentially other small businesses, which is really important, I think, right now. We're definitely in huge support of this development because there's a lot of traffic that travels that way for work. There's no gas stations nearby or food. We're always getting people that are complaining, I gotta go on my lunch break, but they don't have enough time to get somewhere and get back. So it's a chance to grab a quick snack, food, gas, water nearby. There's plenty of people that still drive cars and will be getting gas and food no matter what, and they have no options that are close by to the Colorado Tech Center. So we really like that it's going to drive more revenue to the city. And we think that right now that development, as the pastor was saying, I think Alicia and her team has done a great job really making it a great development to the eye, because as you drive by, if you're on 96 right now, it's very bare. It's not to the left of the road. There's nice farmland, and to the right, it's almost kind of an eyesore. So we really like what they're proposing and everything that they've put in place, and think that they've really done their research on this. Those are the comments we wanted to add. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Our next commenter is from a phone number ending in the last 4 digits would be 4805. And you might be self-muted on your end. There you go.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. My name is Jay Keeney. I live at 1488 Wilson Place, and I've lived in Louisville since 1984. And I'm calling in support of this project. As a former member of the City Council, this project has been on the planning board, not this exact project, but a project on this site for many, many years. And it's been very hard to develop because of the infrastructure costs and different challenges that each developer has come along and had trying to do something there. This project would be the impetus to get things moving there, to get the other projects built that may come forward there that will bring more revenue for the city and more primary employees for the city, primary employers. As far as the gas station, I frequently have to stop and get gas elsewhere, not in Louisville, because of the direction I'm heading or the poor planning that I've made, and I have to stop someplace along the way, and that would certainly be a convenience having that there. As far as the sustainability, my wife and I drive a hybrid. It does require gas. It gets about 80 miles per gallon, but we do still have to stop and get gas. We're both frontline workers, and we work in Aurora and Denver, so we drive, unfortunately, a lot to get to our jobs, but in COVID, that's what we have to do. So that would be a benefit having that station there, whether coming into town or leaving town. We don't normally go to South Boulder Road on our way home or on our way out of town. It's not convenient for us to do that. So this would be a convenience having that there. I believe that the architecture that's been presented would be very low visual impact. The lighting is a very low impact. The mix of materials is a positive. The enhanced landscaping is a benefit. And the trail along the tracks creates a connection for the future for our trail system, is also a benefit for the community. So I hope that the council will look at this favorably based on the many benefits it brings. It may not be exactly what people want or expect there, but I believe that it would be a benefit to our community to have this project, and I hope that you will support it this evening. Thank you for allowing me to share my comments, and thank you for serving our city.
Thank you, former Councilmember Keeney. And that is all the hands that we see raised at this time this evening. So this is the public's chance to comment on this agenda item. So if there was anyone else that wanted to comment on this agenda, please raise your hand at this time so we can call on you and hear your thoughts this evening. All right, seeing none, that takes us back over to council member questions, comments. Not seeing any to start, but I'll start off with a couple questions for Planner Ritchie. And so Planner Ritchie, I'll try to just stick with questions at this point, and we'll save our comments for later. I saw in the special review use a number of the staff explanations for the different criteria revolved around the traffic signal, addressing the circulation and the access and things like that. Is the traffic signal required before the gas station can be built?
The traffic signal is part of the public improvements that would be required prior to any certificates of occupancy for that. So it doesn't mean that it needs to be in place before it can be constructed, but it needs to be in place before it can open.
Thank you. And then the layout here, there's two parcels on the side and then the application that we're looking at today. Can you talk a little bit about the circulation of the private streets? So the future developments will have access to those private streets and be able to develop off of those. And,
Sure.
And there's something in this documentation that assures us of that in the future.
Yeah, so let me share my screen again. I'll go to a slide that shows kind of the overall site plan. So when we look at the GDP, so the approved GDP and kind of the intent for connection within the development as it kind of completes out. This is the primary intersection, full movement signalized intersection here with a kind of 3/4 and then right in, right out, more further to the south. So this access point would be constructed as part of this, as well as this connection here and this through connection here. Future phases are designed to come in and tie in to these locations. And then kind of once you get further in, it becomes kind of a series of probably connected access drives and things like that. But the GDP itself requires access through access easements and connectivity that way. And these particular connections are established on the plat and would be, are anticipated in future PUDs.
Thank you, Planner Ritchie. And so with this screen still up, where you have that full movement intersection with the signal, it's split down the property line there, but we would expect that both sides of that street were constructed with, you know, curb and gutter, and that it would be completed even on the side that's off of this lot.
Yeah, so that's a good clarification. A portion of the development itself shown on this PUD goes over those property lines. And so you're right, the private drive split this property line here. And so a portion of it is on parcel 2 and parcel 1 for Gomez and the Archdiocese property. One thing we didn't talk about, but was mentioned more in the staff report, but while I'm thinking of it and we're talking about private drives, it was a priority for City Council when this preliminary plat came through in 2018 that the city formalize a maintenance obligation for the developer, since we switched the requirement for public streets over to private drives. And so, you know, embedded within the subdivision agreement is that obligation, and then staff and the city attorney have reviewed their covenants, easements, covenants, and restriction agreement that they'll be recording, and it does set forth funding mechanism as well as maintenance standard obligation for the private drives. And the agreement, subdivision agreement, requires that at any time if they change those provisions in the future, the city needs to be notified. So didn't really cover that in the presentation, but since we're talking about private drives, just wanted to note that.
Thank you for that clarification. That's really helpful, and it keeps me from having several follow-up questions. So thank you for anticipating that. So thank you. And I don't really have any questions this evening on the industrial building. I find it meets the CDGS2 well. I don't agree with the logic written up for the waivers, but I do agree with the waivers for different reasons.
Sure.
Fair enough on that. But I guess I have a couple other questions around the convenience station and the gas station. So the planning commission asked a number of questions that were just spot on, great questions. And then I just don't see any requirements around their questions. So there was a number of questions around charging stations. And it seemed like the 7-Eleven representative was keen on adding some charging stations. And so I wonder, maybe if we could have a little question answer or dialogue around that, if there is a requirement in this application for fast charging at this location, or if we can add in a requirement to meet some of the requirements in our SRU process.
Great question. So there's nothing explicit in any city code or design standards that require charging infrastructure for electric vehicles. As you know, our design standards are, didn't really contemplate that technology when they were adopted. That being said, through the special review use criteria, which certainly I think has some more subjectivity within that, there would be the option, I think, to evaluate that as far as compatibility and economic benefit and things like that. Whether or not we could go so far as to make it a condition of approval, I would lean on City Attorney Kelly to weigh in on that.
I guess my question for you, Lisa, was more, is there anything explicitly in here that says they will have a charging station? And so I would just ask, I guess, whoever's the appropriate applicant representative to respond, if it looked like in the planning commission minutes that there was interest in a charging station or an acknowledgement that charging was something that's done at 7-Elevens. And I wonder if the applicant would be willing to entertain either tonight or through some review process, putting in fast charging stations so that it would be more obviously consistent with our comprehensive plan and not contrary to the general welfare of the city and the immediate neighborhood. and lend more effectively to the economic stability and the character of the surrounding area. So if there is someone from the applicant's team that could, I mean, I apologize that it's, you know, a question off the off the beaten path perhaps, but if there's any interest or willingness to add some requirement around fast charging stations.
Sure. Yeah, we have looked into it, evaluated it. Like, we are providing conduit on the industrial side too, I think, for future, you know, EV charging stations. We don't typically, you know, have those at convenience stores just because we're serving convenience type users. And so usually our customers are kind of in and out and really not staying. I think the fastest charge that someone can get, I believe, is like 30 minutes from my understanding. So they really aren't usually hanging around and so utilized. But if that's something that is, you know, important to the city and to council, we can certainly look at adding one parking stall for an EV charging station. It is about $100,000 cost, as well as increasing, obviously, the power requirements in the building for something that we feel may not be utilized that much given the use and far better suited at the industrial buildings. But, you know, again, we're open to the discussion.
Thank you. It looks like there are some other council member comments, but after we, you know, see where the body is, I would definitely be interested in pursuing that line of thought further. I think, you know, we've seen in the news that all the car manufacturers are saying all the automobiles will be electric by 2035. You know, we're heading in that direction. So perhaps this is the way that we're heading on convenience stations as well. And you know, this may be an opportunity for us, as some of the members of the public commented, to lead in this area. Mayor Pro Tem Maloney.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for your comments. I also want to acknowledge another terrific staff report by Planner Ritchie. I really much appreciate that. I also want to acknowledge that the Planning Commission, I think, does a terrific job of really looking at all facets of this and asking really good questions. So Planner Ritchie, I do have a question. On page 15 of the staff report, when it talks about the Planning Commission recommendation, the second bullet talks about the terms of public land dedication, and then the paragraph below says it's included with the subdivision agreement. I don't quite understand that. Could you describe
Sure.
that so even I could understand it?
Sorry for the lack of clarity on that. That was a condition of approval that one of the planning commissioners added to their motion, just to ensure that planning commission's desire that the subdivision agreement get reviewed and approved by city council concurrently with this application got carried forth, that they felt strongly that that needed to happen and not be something that kind of got worked out after the fact. We agree that's a requirement in our code. And so I think it was a condition that didn't indicate it wasn't going to happen anyway, but was just a reiteration of their level of importance for that review.
Okay, so it just sort of magnified that as being as something the Planning Commission wanted to make sure that happened. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, I would agree with that.
Okay. My second question is, I'll note that the staff recommendation, there really aren't any waivers or anything else in this.
There's the two waivers related to landscaping, but staff finds we support those. So there's no conditions of approval. Staff's not bringing forth any conditions.
I think you and I agree. I mean, the work that we've previously done on the PUD and the SRU are things where we've already made some modifications for setbacks and other things. So what's coming before us meets the expectation of what we've created as an expectation for the applicant. Is that a fair statement?
I think that's a fair statement. I think by including, I know there's a lot of discussion tonight around the gas station and whether or not that's an appropriate use on this particular site and context. But I think because it was included as a special review use, it wasn't an out and out no. And so I think that would have been the time for that conversation to make sure that it was, you know, clear at that level, and whether or not that got called out to a degree that rose to the attention of the public is probably probably that didn't occur, that there was an awareness of that. But by including it on there as a special review use, it is subject to that criteria. And again, staff finds that it meets those criteria per the staff report.
All right, thank you for answering my questions and the work you've done on this.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. I just now see Councilmember Lay is in the queue, but I'm not seeing any other council members with questions or comments. So just be thinking of those, and Councilmember Lay, you're up. Councilmember Lay.
Finding my mute button. I've got so many pictures across the top that it took me a minute here. I wanted to just ask, I guess it's a part of request, just page, well, the page I'm looking at is 603.
Councilmember Lay,
And
if I could interrupt and ask, if it's sort of an odd request, but if you could turn off your video, I think we might have an easier time hearing you. There's a bit of like a lag in your internet connection. And so just while you're commenting, if you wouldn't mind turning off your video.
I'm not going to take that personally, Mayor.
I want to hear you just very clearly, and I think that might solve the problem.
I appreciate that. Is that any better?
Yes, sir.
There's no delay in my voice.
Now we can hear you just fine. Thank you.
Okay. All right. In the packet, there is something called a letter of request here.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wanted to understand, because there was an earlier comment in public around a couple of
Councilmember Lay, I apologize. We are just not hearing you.
Sustainability, which obviously is important to the community.
Mayor, I can hear him.
And is in the comprehensive plan. But I've noticed that there are some comments, sustainability, and then again,
So Councilmember Lay, I apologize. I cannot hear you. Can other folks hear Councilmember Lay any further?
No, and I think he just dropped off, so he may be trying to reconnect.
He just let me know he's trying to reconnect.
Yeah.
So we will give just a moment for him to rejoin the public hearing. The joys of virtual meetings. Here we go. We can see
can
you.
you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
Take it away.
All right. Sorry about that. All right. I'm going to be really quick. Page 603 in the packet talks about industrial sustainability. And then there's a separate page 605. There's a comment on 7-Eleven sustainability. I guess what I had questions about was, I don't know that there was any specific discussion about those, but are those comments there still part of the proposal that that's before us?
Sure. So I'm looking at, this is, you're referring to the letter of request from the applicant that's describing kind of their sustainability approach. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So those are still included in their approach. I mean, that's the most recent letter of request that accompanies their application. Most of this would come in as, you know, part of their building permit review. So there's nothing explicit in their PUD that would connect and require, you know, these specific things like the Primex composite concrete flooring rather than the traditional slab on grade. So, and also, to be honest, staff did not verify, you know, those particular, like that particular reference. There I also don't know to the degree that that is, I mean, to be fair, I don't know that those aren't things that all the typical applicants are doing out in the CTC. So I wouldn't be prepared to say right now that those items are a kind of an above and beyond. The applicant might be able to address that more fully as far as, to what degree their competitors aren't also doing those same things. And a lot of these, just might be meeting like the electrical requirements in the code and the energy efficiency requirements in the building code and things like that. So I can let them address, I think, kind of maybe where that exceeds the energy code, things like that, as I'm not intimately familiar with those standards.
Yeah, I mean, where I'm heading on that is a similar direction that the mayor just raised, which is I would like to know what incremental additional benefit above and beyond what we would otherwise require eventually might be in there. I mean, I presume that this is in the proposal to try to convince us that this does help them satisfy the concern that's embodied in the comprehensive plan. I just don't know whether it's whether it's window dressing or whether it's something that's more significant in that. And if they're willing to do anything or to convince us about that. I recognize that these things aren't necessarily required, but the criteria is there. And that's one of the reasons to probably and probably maybe that is best. Well, you can direct the question, Planner Ritchie, however you wish.
Yeah, no, I appreciate those questions. And honestly, if that's something that City Council, I think, would like staff to review more in depth on, I'm not prepared to review and answer those tonight. So if that's something that Council would like additional information or verification on, we would need additional time to do so. Again, I don't know when some of this language related to sustainability for HVAC systems, and again, I don't know if that exceeds the energy code and things like that. So I can turn this to the applicant if you'd like to get their thoughts on this one.
And Planner Ritchie, the point certainly is not to catch you flat-footed on this, and I do, as we always do, appreciate your candor about what you do know and what you don't. Sometimes, as I'm fond of saying, because one of our elected officials is fond of saying, it's not that's the problem. It's what we think we know. That's where we get into trouble. And so I don't know. I'm not proposing anything.
Sure.
It's way premature to say, oh, we need more information about this. I'm just more interested right now in what the applicant might have to say.
Sure. Thank you. So let's ask Alicia if she'd like to start off and tell us a little bit more about the sustainability aspects of the architecture as you've laid out in your letter, or if you'd like to turn it over to a member of your team to do so.
Sure. Yeah, I can start. I don't know, Megan, can you share your screen and pull up that slide on sustainability? That might just be helpful.
Yes.
Everyone to see. But yeah, we didn't address, we were kind of trying to keep our presentation short as we were asked to do, so we didn't take a deep dive into sustainability. But we do have a lot of different elements in the design that I think do go above and beyond what code requires. And I can turn this over to the architect that can kind of delineate that a little bit more. But we're incorporating skylights, into the design. Our building is actually, which is not common and is not done. Most people are doing stick frame builds. We're doing a structurally insulated panel building. So it's actually called a SIPS package that comes in, and it provides continuous insulation barrier and reduces energy levels and I guess, escape from the building from a heating and cooling perspective. There's low water flow, efficient toilets that I think are less than what code requires. And there's a continuous energy management monitoring system that's actually connected to all the equipment, which is monitored from Dallas, from corporate headquarters, to optimize energy usage and reduce energy usage and seasonal fluctuations. We're using low VOC materials, enhanced commissioning on the HVAC, and energy efficient full LED focused lighting. And then low water, drought resistant landscaping design as well is a big feature, especially out here in Colorado. So these are just some of the areas of design where the building itself, I think, actually meets LEED certification. We just don't go through the process of doing that. As some of the examples, we also have bike racks. We probably can add, it was a good idea. I read in the public comment, and I don't know why I didn't think of it. We've had bike repair stations at some of our other facilities, and that's probably a good idea. And we have plenty of space on the south side where the seating area amenity is to add that. So that's something we can work with staff on doing in addition. But I'll turn this over to Tanner. He can maybe delineate more on the code. He's the architect. If you can unmute him. And Chase may want to say something about 7-Eleven's kind of new plans and focus on reducing, energy levels as a company as a whole. So is Tanner there to?
I don't see Tanner's name. I see a number of phone numbers. I don't know if you can clarify.
Tanner, if you have dialed in by phone, if you dial *9 at this time, we'll be able to know who you are. Otherwise, we don't see a Tanner in any of the lists. It looks like there's a phone number with their hand up. So let's see if that's Tanner.
He said he's here, so he texted.
Hey guys, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. This is Tanner Kindy. I am an architect at Dimension Group at 5753 Chester Way in Denver. We are an architect and engineering firm for Alicia. We are also one of several corporate architects and engineers for 7-Eleven and maintain their prototype. So Alicia hit a lot of high points here for the LEED baseline standards that 7-Eleven does. Daylight harvesting is not explicit in code, but it is something that we volunteer to meet what we call a COM check. SIPS is incredibly efficient. Again, structurally insulated panels. It increases our R value beyond traditional construction, so much to a point that we are exceeding, again, COM check, which is a compliance check of the envelope, which is required for code, which is required for Louisville to exceed. We are exceeding that code by anywhere between 10 to 15%, depending upon how many storefront windows we have. So that SIPS structure is really critical to enhancing and reducing energy consumption, as well as all the LED lights and daylight harvesting that we do. We utilize low flow fixtures throughout the store, just primarily to be good stewards and utilize less water. I don't have much more else to add other than what Alicia added. As a baseline, we are starting to put in conduits at the very least for electric vehicle charging stations. And 7-Eleven has been selecting sites to do DC fast chargers, which Alicia kind of alluded to, which again can get you a charge in about 15 minutes. And I believe, and I'll let Chase speak to this, this is already started in process, but it goes through a review process with 7-Eleven to determine viability of such an investment. For example, we have to increase the electrical capacity up to 480 to feed those electric vehicle charging stations, which is obviously high voltage. So it's a little bit different in design, but Chase, I don't know if you want to speak to that at all. And I'm also here if you have any questions on architecture or environmental friendliness as it relates to 7-Eleven.
Great, thank you. City Clerk Muth, if you could add Chase into the conversation for us. Chase?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
So 7-Eleven this year has reduced CO2 emissions by 25%. Sorry to echo again. 25% for 2020. And by 2027, we plan to reduce 40% of CO2 emissions. And by 2050, we plan to reduce 100% of CO2 emissions. That's the company-wide plan.
Thank you so much. All right, so we have some additional questions from council members. If I could get everybody to mute who's not speaking right now, thank you so much. And we will go to Councilmember Brown for his questions or comments.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate it. And thank you to the applicants for their clarifying and for their commitment to sustainability. I really appreciate those comments. I want to say that I agree with the mayor that, you know, the importance of charging stations in addition to, or perhaps even in lieu of, the fueling, the gas pumps at the 7-Eleven is really important to me. The thing that I have really struggled with this application is the first criteria for the special review use, which is that it must be consistent in all aspects with the spirit and intent of the comprehensive plan. And then the comprehensive plan specifically mentions sustainability for our economy, community, and environment, and talks about challenging our business owners to be innovative with sustainable practices such that the needs of today are not met without compromising the needs of future generations. And I am mindful of the challenges of continuing to expand our fossil fuel infrastructure, especially for a community that has continued to put sustainability so high on its list of priorities. So it is, I'm really struggling with the idea of, while I very much, you know, appreciate the partnership of the Archdiocese Ascent Church, all of the landowners, and I know how much work this has been, you know, to get this particular property to this point. I'm still struggling with the idea that it does not, this application and this particular special review use, while the platting itself is fine, and I find it meets the criteria, I'm struggling with the criteria for the special review use of the gas station. That I'll just leave it. I'll leave it there. The sustainability aspects continue to be an important part of the comprehensive plan, and they are important to me as well.
Thank you, Councilmember Lipton.
Thank you, Mayor. I do want to ask Kathleen Kelly. I think somebody already asked the question, you know, what kind of discretion or latitude do we have to basically impose additional requirements on this application?
City Attorney Kelly?
Yes, thank you, Mayor, Councilmember Lipton. Really, any conditions that the council imposes on the application should be related back to the criteria for approval, and those are found in your staff report. You know, certainly it appears as though the applicant is willing to entertain some revisions to their plan, but when it comes to a condition of approval or a basis for denial, you need to pretty linearly relate those back to the criteria.
Okay, thank you. And I do have a question. I guess I'll ask Rob this question. The applicant mentioned it would cost $100,000 for a charging station, but I don't recall the city spending $100,000 for charging stations, you know, and they've placed them in various city developments. So do you have any general estimate or what it might cost? Is it really upwards of $100,000?
You know, I apologize. I was not involved in any of those city facility installations, so we would have to research that unless Director Coer or City Manager Balser knows some of those costs.
Yeah, I mean, I've overseen some installations of facilities for level 2 charging, which is, you know, better than your 110 outlet, but certainly not the 30-minute charging station. And probably 7 years ago, the cost was for a new install, including running conduit, was probably between $7,000 and $10,000. So I would ask the applicant, I think, I did hear mention that maybe this is for the DC, the fast charging, so the 30-minute. And so that I don't know the exact cost, but would imagine that the power needs for a charging station for the kind of to power the whole car within 30 minutes would be substantially higher, but I can't verify that number, and I don't know if 100,000 is the right number.
So my most recent experience with this, I think, was an estimate that we had for the rec center.
Yeah.
We did place, I believe, 2 of them at the rec center. So, and I remember we got some grant money.
Yep.
So it was nothing like $100,000. Maybe it's a different kind of charging.
I think it's the delta between like a level 2 versus a level 3 charger. Alicia, is that?
Yeah, we would be proposing to install the fast, ones, because again, it is convenient. So, sitting around and waiting. So I think that's part of it. The other part of it is it does take our power needs and increases them significantly. So it's a bigger transformer. It's a bigger, panel system. It's a ripple effect. I have priced it pretty significantly. We looked at it on other project, and I think, it does going to range from somewhere 60 to 100. It'll be somewhere in that ballpark. But again, it's something we're willing to certainly look at and do.
Yeah, the rec center has level 2 chargers, I think, for a comparison. So
just to clarify, because I think I may have started us down this path of conversation. So I was talking about the fast charging station like Alicia was, and it is a significant cost increase with the power requirements. But the upside is that right now the state is providing grants to private businesses and to governments, and those grants will dry up over time. And so, I even know of one going to a 7-Eleven for a fast charging station. So, I think there is a cost, but there is also the benefit that there's additional state funding. And just to clarify, in addition, I didn't specifically say which criteria I was referencing, but I used the exact language from criteria when I brought this up. So I was referencing special review use criteria 1 when I talked about that I thought that it would be more consistent with the plan and not contrary to the general welfare of the city and the immediate neighborhood. And criteria 2 of the special review use, that if we added a fast charging station, it would lend to the economic stability and was compatible with the surrounding character. So I wanted to clarify that I was specifically relating it to 2 special review use criteria in the comments I made, even though I just used the language from the criteria and didn't specifically call them out. Councilmember Lipton?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and in addition to the grants, there is revenue potential because, charging isn't free. So over a certain period of time, 7-Eleven would derive revenue and, help offset that additional cost. My general thinking on this is, is my experience on planning commission and then on city council was that, what we're required to do is really apply our rules and our laws to applications that come through. And, it seems to me that this conversation has been instructive in the sense of flushing out a lot of things that are aspirational that we would like to have in our requirements for the future. And we've talked about things like upgrading our building codes and, special sustainability codes and, so on and so forth. But I feel reluctant to get too far ahead of us on the back of one application. And if we're going to have special or additional requirements for the industrial building or certain aspects of the retail establishment, it's we haven't done that to other developers. So if you look at CTC, we don't have any special requirements other than our building codes and our design guidelines, and we apply those to applications that come in, and we either deny or approve with conditions. So I know people are, anxious to upgrade all those requirements looking forward, but I'm not sure how much of that we want to do based on one single application and whether that's really fair. Now, I think the design and the architecture for the buildings and the overall layout are actually quite good. I think Planning Commission and our planning staff did a very good job reviewing this and negotiating items with the applicant. I think that it's very they've been responsive to the things we talked about at the plat, including the lighting issues and things like that. So, you know, I'm inclined to probably be in favor of approving this as presented. If the applicant wants to, you know, volunteer an effort to look at a charging station or, you know, maybe multiple charging stations, I think that would be a benefit to the applicant as well as the city. And that would be, you know, to me, icing on the cake. But the cake to me is fine. And I think the applicant has satisfied our requirements of the city. So I'm generally in favor of it. I'd like to continue the conversation on the charging station. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Lipton. Councilmember Fahey?
Thank you, Mayor. I would generally agree with what Councilor Lipton just said. I think that the design of the buildings and the layout of the land are all really spectacular and in line with our codes. And the benefit to the builder would be long-term gains financially if they do the charging stations or even better, stricter building codes in the construction of the buildings. Because long-term, those things are all going to end up costing more, and then you'll save more money in the long run. But I would also agree that they have met our requirements, and I would be in favor of voting for this project.
Councilmember Lay?
Yeah, I wanted to just, I guess, make two clarifications about what I said. And maybe it's simply my other hat that I wear that just puts me into this idea of asking questions, not necessarily reflecting how I view the entire proposal. I'm more poking around on it to see what the criteria, you know, what room we have in the criteria and how the, you know, the applicant is or is not meeting it. So, and I don't know whether we're on council comments yet, but that first criteria is the one that I was referring to. It includes other pieces which are really important, namely the economic prosperity of the city. And so, you know, that's and the other issues that, or the other, you know, facts that Planner Ritchie outlined quite well in her report. You know, these, it makes it difficult. Well, anyway, are we yet on council comments? Because we've gotten, we are, okay. I think what I would say is that I too agree with Councilmember Lipton. I mean, I served on the Planning Commission, and I understand the importance of applying the criteria that we have and not necessarily the requirements that, or certainly not new requirements. I mean, they have to be nested within the requirements that we have for special review use. I appreciate Planner Ritchie's report, and I do agree with it. And I think that I am interested, like Councilor Lipton, and I think Mayor Stolzman earlier in talking about having, you know, potentially charging stations in there. I think that's But that's not a do or die. I think this, the applicants met the criteria, each of the criteria that we've set forth. I am mindful in all of that too, that we do need to be aware of, looking at sustainability criteria and all the others. I am more taken, the thing that gives me pause sometimes is whether our criteria are predictable, which I really do believe is important for applicants and the council and the community alike. And I think it's really important what Council Member Lipton said about that, and I share it, having served on the Planning Commission. So I'm inclined to favor this. I think it does what we want it to do for that area. And I think one final thing that I would say is that one criticism, and this is a separate issue perhaps, but one criticism of the Transportation Master Plan process is that not enough attention is paid to those who drive, and they're not necessarily going to be, and probably drive gasoline powered automobiles. And for a period of time, not for the long term, but for a period of time, that's going to be an use. And it's a hard one to balance. And I don't mean to suggest that it needs to be overbalanced here, but I think that this is a good, this is the right, this is a proposal that fits these criteria and this board. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Lay. Very, very good discussion tonight. Thank you, everyone, for that. So I heard from many people that there's interest in continuing the discussion around the charging station, and I just want to be clear. I agree that the CDDSG, the commercial design guidelines and standards, are met with regard to the industrial building, and with the answers to my questions around circulation, that the other aspects of the development meet the municipal code. But this has multi layers of approvals within this review, and one of the features is this special review use for the auto fueling station. And so for me to be able to find that the development is compatible with the requirements in the special review use, I would really need to see that we add this fast charging station as a requirement this evening. And without that, I won't be able to find that it meets the first and second criteria for the special review use. So if folks are all right, moving forward with that included in the application as a requirement for approval, I think we could entertain a motion around that. Otherwise, I would welcome a different motion or more discussion around the topic. Mayor Pro Tem Maloney.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to make a motion to approve resolution number 23, series 2021.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Just for the record, who seconded? I just didn't see. I apologize. Councilmember Lipton seconded the motion. And would the motioner and the seconder be willing to entertain a friendly amendment to require a fast charging station to approve the special review use for the auto fueling station, citing the first and second criteria, that in order to find that those criteria are met, we would need to add a fast charging station to prove to the community that it was not contrary to the general welfare and economic prosperity of the city or the immediate neighborhood, and that such a use development would lend to economic stability that would be compatible with the character and any surrounded established areas.
Could I ask for a procedural clarification from Kathleen Kelly?
Sure.
Kathleen, could you just kind of give us a little bit of direction whether procedurally we're doing this correctly? If that's if we want to go this direction, this is the right way to do it.
Sure. From a procedural standpoint, what has occurred is there's been a motion and a second, and the mayor has asked if the movement would entertain a friendly amendment. So the movement needs to, at this point, say yes or no to the friendly amendment. And if
Yeah, I understand that. I mean, we can approve the SRU with a condition? I guess that's my question.
that is the friendly amendment being proposed. I guess
Yes,
I'm
ma'am.
not understanding the question, and maybe it's the use of can.
No, we're permitted to layer on a condition on an SRU.
Yes, the resolution is approving the SRU.
Okay.
Mayor
With a
Pro Tem Maloney?
with a condition now.
Well, Mayor Pro Tem Maloney hasn't had a chance to respond.
Mayor, could you recast what you said? And before you do that, my reaction is going to be, we're doing it based upon this application. I don't have a disagreement with what the direction you're talking about. What bothers me is the timing of this. So.
Sure, I will recast. So the first time I made my comment, I gave the explanation justifying the comment. And so this time I'll just simplify it to what I'm actually proposing.
Thank you.
Which would be to add a condition of approval to the SRU that there be a fast charging station at the auto fueling station.
So you're saying one?
That there would be a requirement to have one fast charging station.
I would agree with that.
Councilmember Lipton, will you accept the friendly amendment?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, there is a motion on the table and a second. Is there any discussion or questions around the motion that we're talking about this evening, or any discussion in general? Councilmember Brown.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to Mayor Pro Tem Maloney as well as Councilmember Lipton. I think with the addition of the fast charging station, I believe it's more, I can interpret the first criteria as well as the second criteria for this, for the special review use to be more consistent with the criteria. And so with the amendment, I'm willing to support the resolution.
And Director Zaccaro, our planning director, has a question or comment for us. Director Zaccaro.
Right, I just wanted to clarify really quick. In the municipal code for special review uses 1740-100B, it does discuss the ability to impose conditions specifically on a special review use as they relate to the criteria that we've talked about, which the city attorney pointed out they have to be directly related. And then there's additional guidance in that section. Again, it's 1740-100B. It does state that conditions can be made related to the criteria. One of them is noise, vibration, air pollution, and other environmental influences. So there's a list. So that might be the most relevant to the potential condition that you're discussing. So I just wanted to clarify that procedure.
Thank you very much, Dr. Zaccaro. And I also really appreciated the public comments and the applicant recognition that a bike repair station might be a good fit in this area as well. And so if that fits in, great, but I don't think we need to add it as a condition. Are there any other council comments or questions on the motion that's on the floor? I don't see any hands raised. It looks like Planner Ritchie may have. Oh, okay. I was trying to read your body language.
Sorry.
All right. I am not seeing any other hands at this time. And so with that, I will close the public hearing and ask for a roll call vote on the motion.
Councilmember Fahey?
Yes.
Councilmember Brown?
Yes.
Councilmember Lay?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Maloney?
Yes.
Mayor Stolzman?
Yes.
Councilmember Lipton?
Yes.
Councilmember Dickinson?
Yes.
Thank you, everyone. That takes us to our next order of business this evening, which is resolution number 24, series 2021, a resolution setting certain water, wastewater, stormwater, and other fee rates and charges for the city of Louisville, Colorado. Our Public Works Director, Coer, is going to take us through a very brief presentation. He'll be available to answer questions. And I'll just start off by saying a big thanks to the Utility Committee for reviewing this for us and going through all the details. We appreciate that heavy lift. And so to the members of the public watching, the utility committee has been through this in depth, and we have all read it in depth in the packet, and it's available there for you in full transparency to understand how we're trying to make sure we're doing a great job being stewards of the water system, which is so important to all of us. And so while the presentation will be brief this evening, that does not mean it has not been thoroughly reviewed. Director Coer?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm actually going to turn this one over to Corey Peterson, and he will provide that brief presentation.
Thank you. Good evening, Corey Peterson. We cannot hear you.
Corey seems to have dropped off the call. Oh,
Yep,
now he's back.
we have lost Corey.
No, he's back. He needs to unmute.
There we go. Can you hear me now?
Now we can. Hi, Corey.
Oh, sorry about that. Lovely technology. Is my screen sharing okay?
Yes, it looks great. Thank you.
Excellent. So good evening, Mayor and Council. The resolution before you is to approve the utility rate increases for 2021. This would be 2% for water, 4% for wastewater, and 5% for stormwater, and they're planned to be effective for May 1st. So I'll just jump right into the presentation that our longer-term council members have seen and utility members. I'll attempt to keep the overview very general and happy to answer any questions as we go into this with more detail. So starting with the overview slide, the city has developed a rate model that relies on several inputs. We have two alternatives that we look at, just-in-time and smoothing rates. Just-in-time rates look to initiate increases in the exact year that they are needed without accounting for the size of the increase. The preferred alternative is smoothing. That's where the increases are spread out across the entire model period to avoid large swings and increases and have gradual and predictable changes. The model is driven by two performance indicators. There's the debt service covered ratio and the minimum operation target reserves. This is a quick breakdown of what the debt service coverage is. It's defined as your net revenue over the amount of debt, and this tends to factor in year 2025, which we'll discuss later. Given the variability of the tap fee revenue that is included in the net revenue, we evaluate two different debt coverages that both include and exclude the tap fees. That's shown here in this table. The targets are also set a little bit higher than the requirement in the top table, which gives us a cushion for unexpected revenue shortages and avoid drastic or immediate increases to main compliance. One of the changes that we made for this year is we did update the cash reserves from 120 days to 90 days. This aligns with the financial policy that we already have. This slide covers our debt targets. You can see that, as I mentioned earlier, the 2025 shows the retirement of the water debt and then an increase in water and wastewater. This puts those individual funds for a debt coverage perspective a little bit tighter, but this was done intentionally to keep the overall debt the same, as you can see at the bottom. So here's our model inputs. This is what go into the model. The first two are standard, derived from the city's approved budget and the financial system. The two main changes are outlined in the next couple of slides here. So the first one is the modeled tap fees. We developed a new methodology and procedure that updated our minimums, and that's shown in the $168,000 that's shown in 2023 through 2026 for the water fund only. This was based off of analysis of the last 4 years of building permits. So we'll use this new methodology moving forward, and it's now incorporated in the rate setting process. If we hop to the next slide, here's the largest change. This is the spin down option D. It shows the changes to our water capital improvement plan. If you'll notice, all the way in the bottom is kind of the big takeaway number of an adjustment of $4.9 million. This is related to the recent water rights transactions, sales, and purchases that were approved at last City Council, as well as moving up several projects and moving around the large Windy Gap firming project. Here's our standard rate tables. This includes the various results increases over the last couple years. The first row shows the prior rate increases recommended from 2020 that were frozen. The next row gives the range that were calculated as we dealt with the uncertainty of the COVID impacts. And then the second to last row captures the adjustments from the Windy Gap firming project, with the conclusion of the final row showing the recommended rate increase of 2%. This table highlights the iterative process of narrowing down as we get better and more complete data. Here's our graphs that show the comparison between the just-in-time and the recommended smoothing, ensuring that the green and blue bars representing debt coverage in blue and cash reserves in the dark green exceed their corresponding target limits, as the dark orange lines shown. Jumping to wastewater, very
Corey,
simple.
let's just take a moment and stop there. The chair of the utility committee would like to make some comments at this point. Oh, you want to just go first at the end? Sorry.
Yeah, just at the end. Sorry, Corey.
Sorry
No,
about
that's
that.
okay.
I just wanted to make sure that we had a chance if we wanted to wrap up each one. So thank you. That was a great presentation so far on water, and let's hear about wastewater.
Absolutely happy to stop anytime here. So wastewater is very similar, follows the same process with a little bit less variation than water. Again, starting in the top row, we have the 2020 rates, and then they progress through the year to the recommended increase at the bottom at 4%. The wastewater graphs highlight the dip in the debt coverage resulting in the increase in the debt payment in 2025. You can see that in the top right corner. It does stabilize by the end of the model period. This dip is allowed because, as a reminder, all three of the water, wastewater, and stormwater funds are considered one utility, and so the overall ratio remains above the target. Therefore, the wastewater does not need to increase solely to meet this coverage. Moving to stormwater. Stormwater continues the same pattern with a significant decrease in the last couple of years as several large projects have been delayed, lessening the need for the immediate large increases. Hopping to the graphs, you can see these in the light green bars at the bottom two graphs. There's a $2 million capital improvement in 2021. And then there's another one in 2027 at $1.1 million. So these are really what's driving the stormwater fund for those two components.
Thank you, Corey. Great presentation. And so with that, we'll turn it over to Councilmember Lipton for his comments.
Yes, Corey, thank you very much. I just want to thank the staff, particularly Corey and Kurt, and Kevin, Heather, for working with the utility committee, putting all this together and making the changes that we were requesting. I think, and I do want to note that we have a very capable and competent staff running our utility systems. And utility systems are the type of thing that most of our residents don't even think about, shouldn't have to think about unless something goes wrong. Then they think about it a lot and we hear about it. But if you take incidents around the country, you know, Flint, Michigan is certainly a good example, but more recently, Texas. You know, these are situations where I don't think Louisville will ever have to experience. It's not to say we're perfect, but we do have a modernized set of plants. We have great staff running them. And I think our citizens can rest assured that we're going to be able to provide affordable and reliable water and wastewater, you know, for the foreseeable future. One slide that Corey didn't put up, and I don't know if you can do the magic and be able to put this on the screen, is on our packet page 865, which shows our projected rates comparing with other municipalities, yeah, in our region. And, you know, our projected rates and what's being proposed. Yeah, let's look at the total. You know, is extremely competitive with the other cities in our region. And that's with a really excellent physical plant and operational competency. So I think we should be very proud, and our residents should be proud of what we have and, you know, what we can offer in the future at a very competitive rate. So I compliment the staff for all the great work they've been doing over the years and to get us to this point. And our utility committee did work long and hard with them in order to get you a final product for approval. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much for all of that work that's gone into that. And that'll take us to public comment on this agenda item. If any members of the public would care to comment on this agenda item, this is your opportunity this evening. Please raise your hand by clicking the raise hand button at the bottom of the panel or dialing *9. Seeing no one, that takes us back over to council comments and questions and thanks. And so if we could actually just get someone to make a motion to frame the discussion, then we can take other comments or thanks or questions. Mayor Pro Tem Maloney.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to echo the comments made by Councilor Lipton. As a member of the Utility Committee, we spent probably the last year talking about various aspects of this, and Corey and the utility staff and Kurt and so forth have done a terrific job on this. It's something we very, very much appreciate. With that, I'm in strong support of this because we've made a number of changes, measured changes around this. And so I'd like to make a motion to approve resolution number 24, series 2021.
Thank you. Second.
I'll second that. That's why my hand was raised.
Thank you very much. And Councilmember Fahey will round out the Utility Committee with comments.
I would just like to add my thanks and appreciation to the Utility Committee and the staff for a wonderful job. I think they've just consolidated everything in such a way that it makes us more efficient and more cost efficient. So I appreciate all of their efforts, and I will also support this.
Thank you so much. And Corey Peterson and Kurt Koer and all the other folks who work at the water, wastewater, and work on our stormwater system. Tremendous amounts of thanks go out to them. And, you know, throughout the last year, people have talked about essential workers and critical services. And we just have to give our thanks to our water, wastewater, and stormwater staff for actually putting their life on the line and coming into work during this pandemic and making a big difference so that our community was safe and so that we had great water. And it's going to cost a little bit more next year, but it'll be, as we saw, very competitive and the very best we can do. So tremendous amounts of thanks are owed to the staff who are working in the plants. And so please pass that on for us. And with that, I will ask for a roll call vote.
Councilmember Lipton,
Yes.
Councilmember Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Dickinson,
Yes.
Councilmember Lay,
Yes.
Mayor Stolzman,
Yes.
Councilmember Fahey,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Maloney.
Yes.
Thank you so much. That takes us to our next agenda item this evening.
Mayor, could we take just a quick break?
We could take a 5-minute break, but we will start back at 8:36 exactly.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. We are returning from a brief recess. This is the Louisville City Council meeting of March 16th, 2021, and we are moving to our next agenda item, which is agenda item G, if you're following along in the packet. We are going to award a bid for the 2021 concrete replacement project, award a bid for the 2021 crack seal contract, and award a bid for the 2021 street resurfacing project. Again, we'll have a brief presentation on this. We have a lot of options in the packet. If folks want to bring up specific alternative scenarios they have questions or comments about, please do, but I'll ask Director Coer to just give us a brief presentation on the staff recommendation, which is included in the packet and is within our budget. Director Coer?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Just briefly, I have a map on the screen that I think I'm sharing, and I think you can see it. I just want to verify
Yes, sir.
that. Okay, great. So before you, as the mayor alluded to, is a lot of options, but to really simmer it down to what we're recommending tonight, all the lines in black are our base bid. And then we're also recommending the line in red, which is an alternate that is a part of Empire Road that is in the county. And we're looking to coordinate that paving with the county and then get reimbursement from the county. So the red line is kind of a net zero equation there. That base bid is about a $4.7 million in total funding that is required. And it will require a $410,000 budget amendment. Some things in that package that we had discussed with council on a few conversations previous. One of those, there's an allowance for $350,000 to get sidewalk work in along Washington, along Coyote Run, from Hickory to Tamarisk was discussed. So we've left that allowance in there that we hadn't previously planned for when putting the project together late last year. And then we also added Eisenhower into the mix this year. Eisenhower is up north there off of South Boulder Road. It's the street that we did utility work on 2 years ago. And so the road's not in bad condition, but as we've discussed, it's not in the condition that is desired. So we moved that up. And then also we moved up some areas, the South Cleveland, South Buchanan, Hackberry, Lois, and Furway and South Tyler area, just off of Polk. That neighborhood was moved up as well from 2024. The rest of these areas in black, based off the model recommendations or staff observations in the field mid last year, we've provided work for. So I'm not going to go into all the other packages. The other packages either do a hybrid approach to base bid and some alternatives, or just does everything. But we think based off review of funds within our reserve and just sticking with budgets that we've all agreed on and approved to, we're recommending package A. So I'll leave it at that and try to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much, sir. And that'll take us over to the public comment portion of this agenda item. If any members of the public would care to comment on our bid for pavement and concrete, please raise your hand at this time. All right, seeing no one, that takes us back over to council discussion or motions or questions. If any council members would like to start us off, please raise your hand. Mayor Pro Tem Maloney.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I want to thank Kurt for all the work. I'm sure, Kurt, you had plenty of people helping you behind you as well, working on this. You actually provided more permutations than I'm comfortable with, but that's okay. You know, when I look at this, when I got on council, one of the things I greatly appreciated was there was a principled way of looking at paving and concrete, and that was using a very measured approach, something that we do. You'll have to remind me every 2 or 3 years. We actually do a physical inventory of all the roads, and that's how we make a determination of how we meet a certain level of expectation. To me, that's the policy level decision that we should be making. And I think the package A, base bid and alternative 6, which includes actually moving ahead on some streets for 2022, 23, and 24, I support that because I think it's within that policy discretion and direction that we should be providing. So with that, I would make a motion to approve resolution I'd like to make a motion to award the bids for 2021 concrete replacement project, award bid for 2021 crack seal, it says contact, but should say contract, and award bid for 2021 street resurfacing project. Thank you.
And just to clarify, within scope A, as recommended by staff.
Package A, yes.
Thank
Second.
you very much. Thank you. There's a motion and a second, and it's not to preclude other questions or conversation. And so is there any discussion of the motion or any other questions? All right, thank you. Thank you so much. It really is a fantastic body of work that's included in the packet. I liked the number of permutations, so I'm very appreciative of seeing all of that and understanding going forward what we might be able to do in the coming years. But given the budget that we have before us, this seems like the most prudent path forward, and I'll be supporting the motion this evening. Any other discussion? Right, thank you. If we could please have a roll call vote on the motion.
And if I could, someone could tell me who the second was, I missed that.
It was Councilmember Dickinson. He
Great,
got it
thank
in
you.
first, and then Councilmember Lipton came in right behind him, but
I beat you, Jeff.
just by a hair.
To hear
All
you.
right then, Mayor Pro Tem Maloney,
Yes.
Councilmember Lay,
Yes.
Councilmember Dickinson,
Yes.
Councilmember Fahey,
Yes.
Mayor Stolzman,
Yes.
Councilmember Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Lipton.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone. That takes us to agenda item H, resolution number 25, series 2021, a resolution approving an agreement with Graves Civic Solutions LLC for consulting services in connection with the Louisville Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Task Force and next steps discussion. We will have a brief overview and presentation from one of our members of staff, I believe, Deputy Manager Megan Davis.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Good evening, City Council. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we sure can.
Great, thank you. There are two items for consideration within this agenda item. First is the consideration of the contract agreement with Graves Civic Solutions for assistance coordinating and facilitating the soon-to-be formed EDI task force, which is resolution number 25, series 2021. And the second is to receive council input on how you would like to go about the process of seating the task force. So first, I'll give you a little details about the contract. The city issued a request for proposals for a consultant to assist with the seating, onboarding, coordination, and facilitation of the EDI task force. We received 9 proposals from all over the country, some local with varying levels of experience and expertise. We had a team of city employees who reviewed the proposals and advanced 4 of the proposals for interviews and consultant groups for interviews. We were joined in the interview process by Dr. Courtney Prusmak, who is the Boulder County Manager of Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion, and is also a Louisville resident. And I would just like to extend my thanks to Dr. Prusmak, who took the time to assist with this process and provided her expertise and insights around the potential consultants for this. It was really valuable to have her assistance with this, so we're grateful for that. Contribution. The team selected Graves Civic Solutions for this project. We would like to keep the project moving, so we're asking City Council for approval of resolution number 25, series 2021, a resolution approving an agreement with Graves Civic Solutions for consulting services in connection with the Louisville Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Task Force, so that we may work with the consultant and the city attorney to finalize the contract and begin the work to seat the task force. We've included the proposal and the scope of work in the packet so that you can review the details and kind of the extensive nature of both the consultant's expertise and experience and the scope that has been proposed for the task force process. We do not expect any substantive changes to the contract. Staff is requesting approval for this resolution. Mayor, do you want me to just go ahead and just talk a little bit about the next step, and then we can move to approval?
Yeah, if you could just give us a very short, and then we'll go through that as council and go through it in 2 steps. As a council, we'll first talk about the resolution, and then we'll talk about next steps.
Okay, so concurrent to conducting the consultant search, we opened and closed the application process for the task force membership. City staff conducted extensive outreach including distribution through many region-wide partners, such as nonprofit partners, organizations, schools, CU, other outlets, in addition to our typical city communication channels to solicit applications for the task force. We received 55 applications for the 11 task force seats, and staff is now interested in getting council input on next steps in seating the task force. The consultant will assist with the seating of the task force, but we understand that council will likely want to be involved as well. So we are proposing that city council assign 1 or 2 council members to assist the consultant and staff with review of the applications, sort of a review team. And then further options could include city council interviewing all applicants for the EDI task force. The review team could make recommendations as to whom city council should interview for appointments to the task force, and council could hold associated interviews and make final recommendations, or the review team could also conduct the associated interviews and make recommendations to city council regarding appointments. Those are some possibilities, and council may have other thoughts as well. So we would like to get your input on your preferred process for seating the task force.
Thank you so much for that presentation. And so that takes us to the public comment portion of this agenda item. If any members of the public would care to comment, please raise your hand by clicking the raise hand feature at the bottom of your screen. Seeing no comments on this, this takes us over to our council discussion. So if we could just first confine the discussion to approval of the contract, if there's any discussion or motions around that. And once we handle that piece of the agenda, we'll move to determining how we seat the task force. Councilmember Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll go ahead just to frame the conversation. I think I appreciate the work that that the staff has done, and I really appreciate the county's involvement here. The staff members of the county, who Deputy City Manager Davis mentioned, have an amazing expertise they presented to the consortium of cities, and so I appreciate them being involved and helping to guide us here as well. I'll go ahead and move the resolution 25, series 2020, just to frame the conversation.
Thank you. Is there a second? Thank you, Councilmember Lay. Councilmember Lay has comments as well. Councilmember Lay.
It's just a question of staff in the process, and I appreciate all the staff work that has gone into this, which we've seen, you know, if we look at it, it's been more than half a year now. The only question I have is in terms of the bids that came in, they were pretty widely varied. And I'm wondering, at least as I saw it, there was at least one bid that was almost twice the amount. Is that correct, first of all? And if so, can you give us some sense of what the difference was substantively that might have explained that?
Sure. Yeah, I'm happy to respond to that. So, you know, there was a real range in a couple different areas, specifically in the level of detail in the scope of work that was provided by the consultants. Some areas like the community outreach elements, the amount of just kind of onboarding that was provided to task force members. There was some real variation in that. I would say that on the low end, there were also some consultants that didn't necessarily fully flesh out all of the steps and left some sort of margin for additional consultant hours as needed. So I think that might have been also a little bit, you know, not misleading, but just sort of, we would have had to add some more hours for the additional work that wasn't fleshed out. And then I think some people, the team that we are hiring, there are two consultants or two folks. It's Grave Civic Solutions, and he has a partner who he's going to be working with. And you know, some agencies brought 4 or 5 people to the table, some brought 2. So I think depending on how many experts they may have brought in, there could have been a variation in the range of price as well. And I would say experience and expertise with EDI. You know, we did get some consultants who had great expertise with, you know, kind of organizational work, but not as much with community-based work, not as much specifically with equity, diversity, and inclusion, and those types of things. So we were really looking for that level of expertise in those areas.
Good, thank you.
Thank you so much. And so I'm not seeing any other comments on the resolution portion of the discussion. Thank you all. This is incredibly important work, and I think we all recognize that we need help, that we don't have this expertise within our staff, within ourselves. And so, you know, seeking out help so that we can do a better job and work toward improvement is very important. And so I'll be supporting the resolution, and Councilmember Dickinson has some comments as well.
Well said, Mayor. I agree with everything you just said. I think that, you know, I think it's efficient to have a couple of people, you know, winter down the list of 55, 56, 60 people to a number in which we can have a thoughtful discussion about who should sit on this task force. And I think we've talked about that with other things, that we have an embarrassment of riches on who might apply and who might be able and willing to serve on it. And so I have no doubt that we'll find 11 or 7 or 9 or whatever people that will be fantastic. But I would think that it would be beneficial to assign a couple of people to get us to a more reasonable number.
So Councilmember Dickinson, are you talking about option 3 in the packet, that we would ask maybe 2 council members to do the recommendations and recommend a list of folks for council to approve at a future meeting?
Yeah, and I think I am, but not necessarily to recommend 11, but maybe to recommend a subset, maybe 15. But yes, I think a couple of people to get us to a smaller number would be great.
And I apologize. I just want to make sure I understand what you're saying. I just want to clarify. So there are different options in the packet. One is that we would have 2 council members do the interviews on our behalf, because with these Zoom meetings, you know, interviewing that many people with all 7 of us could be burdensome. On the other hand, this is really important and everyone might want to participate. So there's just some different options. And I wasn't clear if you were saying we should pick the second one, where the group would just shrink it down and then council would interview people still, or if we would actually go forward with a couple of folks that would do the heavy lifting for us and make a recommendation of a slate of candidates to the council to approve.
Sorry, so I would say that I think we should, as a council, interview a subset. So I would hope that we'd have a couple of people that could get us to a smaller number. But as you said, this is pretty important. And so I hope we would interview that finalist group.
Thank you very much. Other council thoughts and comments on the process moving forward on how we would select the task force and what council involvement might look like around that? Councilmember Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a point of clarification: Are we going to vote on the resolution before we do direction, or should we just continue on direction?
I was going to, and then Councilmember Dickinson gave us a really nice segue. So I figure put a pin in the resolution, but I had originally planned on that we would vote on the motion. So let's just go ahead and do that. Since we have a pending motion on the table, I'll ask for a roll call on approving the consulting services that we'll need for this. And then we'll move on to the discussion that was nicely laid out for us by Councilmember Dickinson. So if we could have a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Lay,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Maloney,
Yes.
Councilmember Fahey,
Yes.
Councilmember Dickinson,
Yes.
Mayor Stolzman,
Yes.
Councilmember Lipton.
Yes.
Thank you. And so that takes us to the next steps part of this conversation and agenda item, which is how we would keep the task force. Councilmember Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Councilmember Dickinson, for teeing up this conversation. I would be in favor of option number 3. I think that sort of consistent with the way that we selected our boards and commissions last year. I certainly appreciate the Councilmember Dickinson's comments about, you know, needing, wanting to get to a smaller group and then have everyone weigh in. We can certainly, I'm not necessarily opposed to that. I guess my preference would be that we follow what seems to be a process that we used earlier through boards and commissions appointments, and that might be a streamlined way to do it. But so those are my 2 cents. But my Councilmember Dickinson's comments are well taken. So
Thank you. And this is a hard choice between many choices. We have a couple more council members that'll weigh in with their thoughts, but I do just want to put out there on the table that one consideration is, if we do have council members interview everyone, we'll have it in this format where it's televised, and it can feel a little bit like you're being grilled to some members of the community. So it's just, the format is a little bit different if we have 2 council members doing it versus a quorum of the body. Mayor Pro Tem Maloney.
Thank you, Mayor. And yeah, I do appreciate the comments made by my colleagues. But before I get there, I just, 55 applications, I'm like, wow. I don't know if we've ever had any task force with 55 applications. So that is terrific. So that's one of the reasons that I'm going to recommend option 3, because I think with 55 applications, we're certain to have terrific people who've applied for the EDI task force. And I trust and respect the judgment of my colleagues on council that whoever the 2 that we pick to do this will make the right recommendation. So I think 2 members of council reviewing those and making a recommendation to the city council, like we've done for all the other very, very important council commissions and boards and so forth, I think is a good model, and that's what I would like to support. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Member Lipton.
Yeah, I would agree with what has already been said. I would lean more towards alternative 3, and part of the reason for that is our experience with having interviewed a large candidate pool as a full city council is it really turns into be some forms of speed dating, and it's just everybody leaves kind of unhappy about how the process went and what the content was, and how we didn't really get a chance to really talk to the candidates very long. It's just a matter of time management, and I really think this is important enough so that whoever is on this review team gets a chance to engage the candidates. I wouldn't call it interview the candidates. Really engage and see what they bring to the table and what their interests are, and spend the right amount of time and make it a fair process, but get to know these people and not just do a quick 5-minute interview and move on to the next one. Anyway, I'd be in favor of alternative number 3.
Thank you. Council Member Lay.
Yeah, thank you. This has been so far a really good conversation about this. I also think, like option 3, I think that Councilmember Dickinson's comments are very well taken, especially in the sense that this is really important. I think that is a really important part of this. I think that I'd support it for a slightly different reason, which is that when we decided to move forward with this, part of the way we wanted to move forward with this was not to put a heavy finger on the scale of what the issues were going to be and how important they were. I think just the look and feel of the conversation that whatever council members go on the review team and the others who would participate will be a little more conducive to that, and I think it doesn't undercut the importance of it. I think that can be emphasized. But I think it's a little harder to make that point when you have 7 people, interviewing a huge number. So, and it is a balance, I recognize, but I think on the whole, I like 3 for that reason.
Thank you. Councilmember Fahey?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I'm also inclined to go with option 3, but this is considering that we would have, all 7 of us would have the option to read all 50 of the applications. And so we could make comments, or we could kind of not on video participate in the interview process, just to know what's going on before the process actually comes to council. So I think we would have an option to have input without actually being on the task force.
Thank you, Councilmember Fahey. And just, if we do want to have council members participate outside of the 2, then we would want to notice it as a meeting so that members of the community could, if we have 3 people participating, we would want to televise it then in that case. So I'm not saying we should or shouldn't. It's just something we need to be deliberate about and contemplate, what's the best process to be inclusive of everyone in the community, ensure that we have open, transparent meetings, but also ensure we're not intimidating people, and that we get the best outcome. So it is something we need to determine and be deliberate around. It sounds.
Was the public invited to all of the advisory board application meetings?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And we can do it whichever way we want. It's just something we should be determine what we would like to do. And so it sounded like folks were there was a general consensus around option 3, that we would want a review team to hold interviews and make recommendations to city council regarding the appointments. And so I would ask, this is going to be hopefully a nice part of the conversation and not overly competitive, because I know how important this is to everyone, but are there members who would like to put themselves up for consideration to do that work for us that we all think is so important? And I anticipate there'll be more than 2 people, so we'll have to talk it out amongst ourselves with no hard feelings and just be open to the idea that we all contribute in positive ways to the collective good. And so don't be shy. We need to know everybody who's interested in serving. It looks like Councilmember Brown, Councilmember Lay, and Councilmember Dickinson are interested.
Mayor, I'll probably have to recuse myself from the process, as my wife is one of the applicants. So I won't participate in the process, but I'm still strongly in favor of option 2. So I just wanted to make that known. I think you're right that you're reading the room correctly, that option 3 is where we're going. I think option 2 is my preference, but either way, while I'd like to be a participant, I don't think it's appropriate.
Thank you. And so just our folks, I completely understand that is your perspective and respect it very much. And just does it seem like the rest of the group agrees there was general consensus around option 3 that would be the route we wanted to take at this time? It is kind of funny that you want us all to interview all the applicants and you would recuse yourself. That's not lost on me.
I want all of you to spend a bunch of time, but I'll be vacationing in Hawaii. Yeah, I appreciate it, Mayor. Thank you.
Just sorry, we have to have a little fun here, right? So sorry. All right, so we'll move on with option 3. And so Councilmember Dickinson, were you saying that you were not putting yourself up as one of the candidates to review the applications?
Yeah, considering my wife is an applicant,
Okay.
I think it's inappropriate.
So it looks like Councilmember Brown and Councilmember Lay are interested, and Councilmember Lay has some comments for us.
Just one, because we do have to have some fun. There's no question, and goodness knows that EDI is a really serious topic. So any levity we can have, I suppose, might be helpful, but I appreciate Councilmember Dickinson's contribution to all this and his passion for it, because he and I've talked about it. He was involved in the very beginning of this process, and with a lot of really good comments that he made and a lot of nuance that he brought to that, and sophistication and experience in his own organization and with some others. So I do appreciate that. And I also appreciate Councilmember Fahey's comment. If we do go, I mean, we do have a consensus, I think, around 3. I don't know, but whether, I guess it would be interesting to know whether there are any legal constraints on us from making applications available to council members, so that when we do get to the point of bringing it back to council to make the recommendations, that council members can be aware of that information.
So what I would ask Councilmember Lay, sorry, I apologize for interrupting, but if we go with option 3, I would ask that the council members who get assigned the task and the consultant really work through those issues, right? Because we don't know what the recommendations from the consultant will be on how to do interviews, how to be inclusive, what we ought to be doing with applications, what we ought not be doing with applications. So I would ask whoever's assigned the task to work through all of that and determine, what we ought to be doing, and then bring forward to council what we need to see as a council, and otherwise the committee will see issues. And so I just want to give folks a chance who may have wanted to serve but felt shy about raising their hand. Did anyone else want to put their name out there as a consideration? All right. If you snooze, you lose. Okay, so with that, it looks like we have good agreement that we'll go with option 3, and Councilmember Lay and Councilmember Brown will work with the consultant to determine the process that needs to happen to make a recommendation of appointments to the task force to the city council. And I will ask Megan Davis, Director Davis, if that is adequate direction at this point on this agenda item.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, City Council. I think that's the information we need. I would just, City Manager Balzer, do you have any other questions that we need to resolve?
Nope, I appreciate the conversation. Thank you for the feedback and the direction.
Thank you all very much. And that takes us to our next order of business this evening, which is an executive session. And so I am requesting that we convene an executive session this evening, and I will turn it over to our city attorney to introduce the agenda item and request this evening.
Thank you, Mayor. As noted on the meeting agenda, the mayor is requesting an executive session for the consideration of potential real property acquisitions and dispositions only as to appraisals and other value estimates and strategy pursuant to Section 5-2C of the city's Home Rule Charter and CRS Section 246402-4A. Prior to entertaining any motion, the city clerk will read a statement required by the city code.
It is the policy of the city to conduct public business and meetings open to the public. While in executive session, it is inappropriate to take straw votes, keep minutes, or make any final decisions. It is the duty of each council member to ensure executive sessions are conducted with strict compliance with this ordinance, state and federal law, and any applicable provisions of the state and federal constitutions. If at any time the scope, nature, or parameter of this executive session goes beyond the publicly stated topic, it is the responsibility of the city council to terminate and cease any further deliberation within the executive session and return to the public meeting. Only those topics described in city ordinances may be discussed in an executive session. Those topics are summarized as follows. Where federal or state law requires the information being discussed remain confidential, certain personnel matters involving only employees directly appointed by the city council or other personnel matters upon request of the city manager or mayor, consideration of water rights or real property acquisitions and dispositions, but only as to appraisals, value estimates, and strategy, and legal consultation with an attorney representing the city with respect to pending litigation.
Regarding the authority for the executive session, Section 5-2C of the Home Rule Charter authorizes an executive session for the purpose of consideration of real property acquisitions and dispositions by the city, but only as to appraisals and other value estimates and strategy for the acquisition or disposition of such property. An executive session for this purpose is also authorized by the Open Meetings Law, Section 246402(4)A of the Colorado Revised Statutes. With that, Mayor, you may entertain a motion to go into executive session for consideration of real property acquisitions and. Sorry.
Thank you. Yep, thank you. And so I move to go into executive session for the purpose of consideration of real property acquisitions and dispositions, and that the executive session includes City Manager Heather Balser, Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Director Nathan Mosley, Deputy City Manager Megan Davis, and City Attorney Kathleen Kelly.
Second.
Thank you. There's a second. And could we please have a roll call vote on this motion?
Mayor Stolzman,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Maloney,
Yes.
Councilmember Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Fahey,
Yes.
Councilmember Dickinson,
Yes.
Councilmember Lipton,
Yes.
Councilmember Lay.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone. So we will leave this meeting and go into an executive session, and then we will return to this meeting to conclude our council meeting this evening.